It is indeed The Drive. No Brian Wilson today. It's 3:07 and a good afternoon to you. Hope you're having a wonderful Thursday, March 7, 2024. My name is Matt Murphy, normally heard from noon until 3 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Today, I'll be in for Brian Wilson. He's off today, back tomorrow. It's my episode 526 with all of you. Yes, I count these afternoon visits. And I appreciate Brian allowing me the opportunity to speak to those of you who perhaps cannot listen to us between noon and 3. We'll spend the better part of 4 hours together today. We've got lots to discuss, lots to get into, a couple of guests to tell you about coming up in just a few moments. Obviously, Mac Morey's back in the newsroom gathering headlines as we speak, following the breaking news. We'll get to that in just a second. Chris Weber's behind the glass, making sure that everything that comes out of our speakers sounds as good as humanly possible, and holding my hands during the drive during these afternoon hours until 7 o'clock tonight. We hand off to Mark Levin.
You did wash your hands, didn't you?
You told me to do that.
Oh, okay.
You reminded
that's the answer.
You reminded me to do that.
Right. And
I remember you reminding me to do that. On a more serious note, Mac Morey's in the newsroom. Mac, you were telling me about some breaking news happening right now involving the Federal Bureau of Investigation. What do we know?
Yeah, the FBI, along with U.S. Attorney Henry Leventis, they're speaking right now in a case involving national concern. It's concerning Army Sergeant Corbin Schultz, who collected and transmitted sensitive U.S. military information to a co-conspirator in China. It's live right now.
Happening now?
Yeah, happening right now, if you want me to.
Well, let's jip it. Let's join it in progress for just a moment and see what's going on.
Recruiting another member of the U.S. military to join their conspiracy and to provide additional national defense information. In order to conceal their illegal conduct, they used multiple internet-based encrypted methods and discussed destroying evidence. This case is being handled by my office in partnership with the National Security Division. The charges today are the result of that partnership and the outstanding work, investigative work, done by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and by Army counterintelligence. I want to remind everyone that the allegations set out in the indictment are just that, allegations. And the defendant should remain presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. I also want to remind everyone that this United States Attorney's Office will remain vigilant in our efforts to protect the United States' national security, and we will continue to use every tool at our disposal to that end. Thank you.
All right, so that's in Nashville, Tennessee, at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That's at the Fred Thompson U.S. Courthouse and Federal Building, downtown Nashville, just less than a mile away from us as we sit in our studios on Music Row in Nashville, where the Federal Bureau of Investigation announces there was basically a secrets for cash deal. That's the accusation that's going on. Basically, someone within military circles sold secrets for cash money. So we'll continue to follow that story. I know Mac Morey will continue to have it for you in the newsroom. He's got that up and running, and he will deliver any headlines for us as they come available, and any pertinent information will be included in that newscast and on this show for the next several hours. We've lots to do. 615-737-9986. Obviously, you're the most important component of the show, and we'd love to hear from you, either via the telephone lines or the Members Nutrition Super Text line. It's up and running, 615-737-9986. I have that right before me, and I would love to hear from you. And I particularly need to hear from medical professionals, and I'm going to tell you why after I kind of signpost, tell you where we'll go later on today. So obviously the State of the Union is tonight. Need I say that it is a high-stakes State of the Union address for Joe Biden? So many in the mainstream media have called it as such, that he needs to demonstrate to the American people that he has the vim, the vitality, and the vigor to get the job done for the next 4 years. There are questions, mainstream media outlets like ABC, CBS, NBC, and yes, hashtag never CNN. They've been telling us that this guy, they believe, has the bona fides for the job, obviously, and he has the energy for the job over the next 4 years, and he's going to demonstrate such for the American people. But the American people have questions. Naturally, they have questions. He's, after all, an 81-year-old man, and he seems to have slipped a little bit. And I'm just trying to give him the grace that this mainstream media cabal gives him. He's been slipping over the last couple of years, but everyone that talks to him says he's so sharp, that he's so with it when they meet with him one-on-one. These are Democrats talking, understand. And it is a high-stakes moment that he demonstrates that level of energy, that level of vitality to the American people tonight on the national stage. Now, let me break that down for you in real terms, reality talking. So the mainstream media and the sycophants that, dare I say, suckle from the teat of government, Democratic government, they know that Joe Biden is no longer really making the decisions in Washington, D.C. They understand that all of this is a dog and pony show in an effort to present him as the decider-in-chief when obviously other people are making the decisions, and this is a guy not ready for prime time. And in a normal day, they have the ability to block and tackle for him, to protect him, to make sure that he doesn't get too far in front of his skis in any given setting at any given moment. And we watch it happen in real time every day, where, you know, Joe is looking blankly at the wall while the White House administration shuttles the press corps out as they scream questions at him and he refuses to answer them. The press asking questions of Karine Jean-Pierre just a couple of days ago, the soon-to-be erstwhile press secretary. Why does he have note cards everywhere he goes, even in one-on-one meetings? Why does he have note cards everywhere he goes? Well, it's pretty obvious to the average folks who have been around people in our lives, maybe family members who have, sadly, dementia. We understand because he doesn't remember what he's doing. He doesn't remember why he's in a room. And that's easy to manage in a setting that lasts about 5 minutes publicly. And I've long said, I've been saying it on my midday show for a long time, and I've said it on occasion here on The Drive. Remember this. The best you ever see of Joe Biden is when you see him on television. If this is as bad as it is on TV, how bad is it the rest of the 23 and a half hours a day? I promise you it's worse, not better. They know when his media availability will be. They know when he has to be in front of television cameras for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes. And the media knows it too, which leads me back to why they're classifying this as a high-stakes moment for Joe Biden. His handlers know that they have to get him up and get him ready for 10 minutes per day. And then everything else can be downhill during that day. Well, it's longer than 10 minutes tonight. They have to prop him up for at least an hour and a half and maybe a little bit longer than that, all total. You know, from the pomp and circumstance of walking into the room, taking that very, very slow, laborious walk down the hall, down the center aisle in the House of Representatives chamber to the podium, then delivering the speech, and then the long walk back up the aisle until he can disappear in the limousine and off back to the White House to go Betty bye. Now, obviously, Joe Biden is not Joe Biden's not up this time of night normally, so I would expect that he's in bed right now, taking a little nap or two, making sure that he's fresh. But I think for this moment, I mean, you're talking about a president who is 81 years of age. You're talking about a president who, even absent his age, has been, by any objective metric, a failure. Tell me where Joe Biden's successes are. Economy? I don't think so. Border? Nah. Energy policy? I don't know. Cities are our main. Do we have law and order in our major cities around the United States of America? Is he a freedom guy, this president? What about foreign entanglements? What about Ukraine? What about Israel and Gaza? Show me where he has succeeded in anything that he's done. So by any metric, especially considering that these folks have zero desire to debate anyone on a stage, much less Donald Trump. This is probably the last time you're going to see Joe Biden in an extended setting, standing up in front of the American people and presenting himself in a way that comforts Americans who are perhaps on the fence for some reason or another regarding his ability to do the job. This is it. I know it's a long time between now and November, but outside of the convention, and they can manage the convention in any way they want, and you still are hard-pressed to convince me that Joe Biden will ultimately be the nominee. But outside of that, this is a moment for him. And frankly, I believe that if the Biden circle recognizes that he has failed this moment, if something happens, and the chances of something dramatic happen, like a slip and fall or whatever, are minuscule. And I'll get into why I believe that is the case in a moment. But if something does happen, this is a pivot point. Not just in this election, but in American history, truly. Because if Joe Biden can't manage to deliver a speech for an hour to the American people, obviously he's not going to be able to manage the rigors of a political campaign, even as much as they try to hide him in the basement. Which leads me to my very real question. Now, in a few moments, we'll talk to Congressman John Rose about the nature of the State of the Union, the nature of the speech itself, his decision to vote no on the what is being described as the mini omnibus or mini bus with regard to some spending going on for the rest of the year. John Rose at 4:05. Scott Cepiki will tilt us back to state news at 4:35 regarding the Education Scholarship Fund. He will answer any and all of your questions regarding that at 4:35 this afternoon. But before we get to that, any of you medical professionals in the audience, I want to talk with you at 615-737-9986. This is not a question that I'm asking in any flip sort of way. I'm being serious. What are they pumping Joe up on? I'm being as serious as I can be. What are they giving Joe Biden? Now, we could be funny with it, and we could say, oh, Hunter's giving him some cocaine or whatever. I mean, I understand the jokes write themselves. But I'm asking this in a more serious way. We know that they're giving him something. If you are a medical professional and you need to get an 81-year-old energetic in a way that he doesn't keel over with a heart attack, what are you giving him? Are you giving him amphetamines? I mean, back when I was a kid in the 1980s, they called them greenies. Are you giving him greenies? You giving him some yellow jackets? Are you giving him Adderall? What are you giving Joe Biden that would pump him up for the 2 hours that you need him up in order to affect and accomplish the desired goal, which is to keep him as focused as you possibly can, read the speech. I mean, B12? I just saw B12 on the super text line. Maybe a B12. I don't know that a B12 shot would accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. I take B12. Somebody said Mountain Dew and meth. Viagra? I'm going to leave those on my show. I might tell a few jokes. I'm not going to sully the reputation of the drive and tell the jokes that come to mind.
I think you did say something about getting Joe Biden up.
That was Chris Webber, not Matt Murphy, on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It's 3:22. Let's talk about it. Any doctors in the house willing to share with me what you think might be the prescribed concoction that would get Joe Biden where you need him to be for a couple of hours tonight during the State of the Union address? I'm curious. 615-737-9986. Lots to get into on this edition of The Drive. No Brian Wilson, Matt in for Brian. It's 3:22 on Super Talk.
Hey everybody, Dan Mandis here. Got my first shipment of emergency food from My Patriot Supply. Gonna make these pancakes. Now you prepare and cook them just like regular pancakes. But thanks to the special packaging, they last for 25 years. So when things go wrong, you are eating right with My Patriot Supply. And yes, they taste great. Now every week, I'm going to introduce you to different food. My Patriot Supply is America's most trusted supplier of emergency food. Head on over to my website, preparewithmandis.com, right now and see all the different foods that they have and all the great specials as well. That's preparewithmandis.com. Be prepared for anything with My Patriot Supply and preparewithmandis.com.
A sergeant charged after allegedly sharing classified military information with China. An investigation results in Uvalde after the mass shooting at Robb Elementary School in 2022. Those stories, 3:30, Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, Mr. Maury. It is 3:27 right now on the drive. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt in for Brian. Brian back tomorrow. Never you fear. I'll be back in my normal spot between noon and 3 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Man, oh man. I'm still kind of cascading down from the high of the event we all had together just the other night. That was a lot of fun. It was no fun for Chris Webber, who had to manage. That's like managing a circus from a closet. I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. You know, and I have no whip to tame the lions with.
No, that's right. It's a closed door. You have one little peephole.
Yep.
You get to see what's going on, and you just have to shout through the peephole.
That's it.
And beg people to do what you're trying to get them to do. But we had a great time out at Nashville Palace. It was a lot of fun. So I'm kind of just getting over that high. And the reason I mentioned that is that I think I caught this morning's Nashville's Morning News with Dan Mandis, that he's off next week and he's going on a cruise.
Really?
That's what Mandis a long time.
I hope it's filmed. It needs to be documented because that's going to be awkward.
Mandis on a boat with about, 3,000 other people.
I hope the Amy packs the Dramamine. Because I could see Dan turning a little green around the gills.
I just envision Dan on a lounger next to the pool in long pants and a hoodie.
And his nose white with the zinc sunscreen stuff.
At the top of the head.
I'm looking up special sunscreens for bald heads right now.
And if you're listening to me right now and you catch Dan Mandis in the morning on Nashville's Morning News, do me a favor and send him a super text and tell him that you heard from the drive yesterday that he was going on a Disney cruise. A Disney cruise. Specifically, Disney cruise.
Is it really? Or no? It's not? Okay.
So I'm texting with him about something completely unrelated. And I said, did I hear you were going on a cruise? And the next thing he texted me was, all I said was, did I hear you're going on a cruise? Because I've never been on one. They are intriguing to me. Have you ever been?
I have never been.
See, I would just prefer to fly where I want to go.
Yeah, I'm kind of that way too, yeah.
I don't want to be stuck on a boat with other people.
Yeah. No way.
The minuscule possibility of something going wrong and being stuck on the boat with other people. I don't like other people that much. You've never been, Maury? No cruise for you?
No. A no kids cruise I'd consider.
Sure. I mean, there is a casino on the boat, but I can go to a casino, anywhere. So I say, I heard you were going on a cruise, ! The next text I got was, it's not a Disney cruise. Apparently, he's a little touchy about this.
He's like, I know you're thinking it.
Apparently, there was a suggestion that he's going on a Disney cruise, and that in and of itself makes Dan Mandis woke, and there's a lot of stuff that go on there. And so just text him in the morning and said, I heard you were going on a Disney cruise.
Oh, he just needs to let it go.
Oh, boy.
That was terrible.
That was goofy. See what I did there?
Nice.
It's 3:30, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. What is Joe Biden going to be taking? We'll talk about it next, right after the news on Super Talk.
.30, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. 66 degrees, more chances for rain in Nashville later on this evening. Weather forecast, traffic report, 5 minutes. Breaking news, the FBI and U.S. Attorney Henry Leventis just spoke on a case involving national concern just now on the third floor of the Fred D. Thompson U.S. Courthouse and Federal Building right here in Nashville. Army Sergeant Corbin Schultz has been indicted for collecting and transmitting sensitive military information to a co-conspirator in China while also bribing an official. Here's Leventis speaking on the matter.
The defendant is an Army intelligence analyst assigned to the 1st Battalion, 506 Infantry Regiment and stationed at Fort Campbell. He was arrested earlier today and will make his initial appearance in court tomorrow. As an intelligence analyst, the defendant had duties including serving as a custodian for confidential information and training others on the proper handling, storage, and dissemination of confidential information. As set out in the indictment, however, the defendant is charged with entering into a multi-year conspiracy to illegally exploit his access to national defense information for his own financial benefit. He traded our national defense information for cash.
I'd say it started in June of 2022 and that it included documents related to advanced fighter aircraft, advanced military helicopters, intercontinental ballistic missiles, high mobility artillery rocket systems, defensive missile systems, and Chinese military tactics. They say in return he received $42,000. Residents of Uvalde, Texas today heard results of an independent investigation into the police department's response to the 2022 mass shooting at Robb Elementary School. At a special meeting of the Uvalde City Council, former Austin police detective Jesse Prado, who led the investigation, cited a number of failures in the police response to the shooting. Prado said Uvalde Police Lieutenant Javier Martinez, who was the highest-ranking Uvalde officer in the hallway outside the classroom where the shooting took place, committed no misconduct.
I found that Lieutenant Martinez made the right decision by not blindly shooting into the room, into the blacked-out room. He had no line of sight. He had no target.
And that's the latest news. Traffic and weather on the way. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Hey everybody, Dan Mandis here. Got my first shipment of emergency food from My Patriot Supply. Gonna make these pancakes. Now you prepare and cook them just like regular pancakes. But thanks to the special packaging, they last for 25 years. So when things go wrong, you are eating right with My Patriot Supply. And yes, they taste great. Now every week, I'm going to introduce you to different food. My Patriot Supply is America's most trusted supplier of emergency food. Head on over to my website, preparewithmandis.com, right now and see all the different foods that they have and all the great specials as well. That's preparewithmandis.com. Be prepared for anything with My Patriot Supply and preparewithmandis.com.
Indeed, it is The Drive, Supertalk 99.7, WTN 338. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson today. Thank you for being a part of the show. State of the Union tonight. We're discussing it. I asked a question a moment ago, and I'm looking, is there a doctor in the house? Is there a doctor in the house? I'm looking for more serious answers. I've got a lot of them on the super text line. I'm going to go through some of those in just a moment. But a serious question. You know, for a long time now, we've been speculating on just how bad it's gotten in the White House and just how bad Joe Biden has gotten. Now, if you choose to do this, and occasionally I put myself under the red-hot spotlight of what I do on a day-to-day basis, and I choose to go there, you can go back and you can find video from Joe Biden's days, you know, back in the 1990s and 2000s as a United States Senator from Delaware. You can then find plenty of video and audio recordings of Joe Biden, for example, in 2008, 2009, even 2014 through 2015 when he was vice president of the United States. Flash forward to 2019 and 2020 when he was running for president of the United States. And then today. Obviously, as people get older, they slow down. You might lose a step or two, either physically or mentally. Obviously, all of us have been there in terms of, you know, having what is commonly referred to as a brain fart and not remembering where you were going or what you were trying to say. Trust me, as someone who presents himself live and in person for 3 hours a day, sometimes 4 hours a day, Monday through Friday, I am well aware of our ability to do this. But without question, if you objectively look at Joe Biden, you don't have to even go back to 2016. 2019, 2020, and today, it has gotten decidedly worse, and it is obvious that there are some things going on that are wrong with Joe Biden in terms of his ability to process and his ability to communicate. With that in mind, one assumes, based on the amount of prop-up that there has been from the mainstream media over the last 24, 48 hours, one presumes that he will be, in fact, propped up himself in some form or fashion. And I'm sincerely curious if there are any doctors that can tell me what exactly, if you were a physician for the president of the United States and you had to present some sort of cocktail to get him the level of energy and focus needed to get through 2 hours tonight, what that would be like. Now, I understand that it would necessitate having some, you know, past knowledge of his actual mental condition and mental state, but give it your best shot. 615-737-9986, 615-737-WWTN. A lot of you responding to the concept of what exactly he might have. Like, you know, 4481 says 3 Red Bulls and a Snickers bar. I like that. That's good. Prevagen. Okay. I don't know a lot about Prevagen. I don't know what Prevagen would do, but I'll take you at your word on that. Adderall and maybe a Bud Light. Okay. Adderall, oxygen therapy, and perhaps a concoction of vitamin C and B12. 7120 says he'll get a cocktail of Prevagen, B12, a fistful of vitamins, and a 5-hour energy drink. 4565 says the amphetamines are there to keep him from falling down, the Viagra to keep him from rolling off the stage.
Wow.
Oh, I got halfway through that one before I saw that there was a turn there. A lot of Viagra jokes, and I'm not going there. Adderall, a lot of Adderalls too. Adderall, Adderall. I've had a lot of experience with Adderall. It's awesome. I have chronic fatigue, but I'm not on Adderall. You think Joe will be wired? It's a sincere question. And I don't think there's any question that he's going to be given something or another. It's just a matter of what to keep him present and accounted for. Now, how present, how accounted for, it remains to be seen. I would suggest that let us not set ourselves up for disappointment for those of us who expect that he will go rolling down the aisle of the House of Representatives chamber while he's walking to the podium, and he'll have to crawl off in disgrace and not even deliver the speech. I mean, that for some would be the best case scenario. I don't think that's going to happen. I think you'll see a Joe Biden typical of what we see out of Joe Biden on any given day. Maybe he's a little more focused. He spent a week and a half preparing for this speech. A week and a half at Camp David. And I understand this is a guy that normally calls a lid on it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So obviously they see a lot that has to be accomplished during this speech. As far as the speech goes, as far as analysis of the speech goes, look, we truly live, sadly, as much as we have communication at our fingertips, as much as we have the most democratic way to access information in the history of mankind, we live on two different planets when it comes to politics. And sad as it is to say, my friends on the political left have chosen to simply ignore as best they can the failures of the Biden administration because they hate Trump so much. They hate Donald Trump so much. They hate what they have decided he represents so much that they will not allow themselves to see the failures of the Biden administration. And all you have to do, friends, is walk around the grocery store and you'll see it. From the price of eggs to the price of half and half to whatever you're doing, bacon. I mean, Joe Biden runs around and wants to wag his, and he'll do it tonight, by the way. He wants to wag his finger at businesses for shrinkflation. He is the cause of the shrinkflation. When you infuse the amount of money that government, and Republicans are in part at fault too, because they didn't slow up the spending during the Trump administration, sad as it is to say. Now, Biden and his ilk have ramped it up since then. But when you are printing money and infusing money into a system, you're devaluing the dollar to the point that inflation has to happen. And the only way to try to claw it back is to raise interest rates to the point that you and I can't afford a house. So Joe Biden runs around acting as if Cookie Monster is a real thing. Oh, Cookie Monster saw the real deal. Cookie Monster knows that the price of cookies are going up and the size of the amount of the cookies are going down. Well, what do you think shrinkflation is? Other than a business looking at their leisure and recognizing they have to do something. And we did this a little bit yesterday on my show, and I won't belabor it here today on the drive, but just for those of you in Aniana, let's explain it to you. A business doesn't have a lot of options when the means of production, the cost of doing business goes up. When the cost of goods to produce the product that they produce, let's say it's chocolate chip cookies. If the cost of chocolate chips go up, or the cost of flour goes up, or the cost of sugar goes up, or the cost of eggs, or the cost of energy production to keep the lights on in their production facility goes up, they have to respond in some way. Now, the political left, they live in fantasy land. They act as if their margins are such that they just cut a little bit off the top of the profit and they go on doing their business. That's not the real world. Competitive free markets do not operate on these profit margins that the Democrats think they operate on. So they have to do something. Well, they can either use different products that cost them less money and harm the quality of the chocolate chip cookie, or they can demand more of their production team and fire people so as to prevent having to go up on the cost of their chocolate chip cookies, save money that way, or they raise the price of their chocolate chip cookies and they have to take a hit at the consumer level, or option 4 now, they charge you the same for slightly less in the bag and hope that you won't notice. Now, Joe Biden and his people want to take no responsibility for their culpability in all of this, and they wag their finger at the businesses as if the businesses are being shady. The businesses are just looking for the best out of a lot of bad options because of circumstances that they had nothing to do with. The cost of doing business going up in the fashion that it went up. They're going to pass those costs along to the consumer in some form or fashion. In this way, they pass it along in volume. I mean, do you think Joe Biden takes any responsibility for any of that? I don't think Joe Biden could find his butt with a compass and a flashlight, much less take responsibility for these things. Steve is in Hartsville with a thought on Biden. Hey, Steve, good afternoon. Welcome to The Drive. How are you?
Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm well.
In regards of pumping Biden up to speak, there was a 60 Star Trek episode with Captain Kirk where I went to a planet that had like a parallel universe. It was Nazis. Well, there was a lost member of a previous Federation captain. He had to be pumped up to tell all his little lies. And I can't remember the name of the episode, though.
The episode name, Steve, was Patterns of Force.
Oh, yes. Have you seen that show?
I have not, Steve.
They had him pumped up to tell lies and to keep awake.
Well,
and that's all I was wanting to say.
Well, Steve, I'm glad you called.
I appreciate all your efforts.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the tip. I need to look that up. Patterns of lies.
Patterns of Force.
Patterns of Force.
Yeah, it had a Nazi theme to it, oddly enough.
I think Joe Biden has a few Nazi themes under his sleeve on tonight's episode of the State of the Union address. A lot of you are suggesting that I do my shrinkflation monologue in a Cookie Monster voice. I don't know that I have a Cookie Monster voice. I could go for a Cookie Monster voice. Maybe I'll work that up and try to get back to you. But 4121 writes, and you're exactly right, but Orange Man bad. Liberals, I have noticed that those that I would consider to be friends that are left of center, they have gotten suspiciously quiet about politics. I don't know if you've noticed the same thing, if any of you have any friends who are left of center. I don't know that I have any friends that are pure leftists, but I do have, I would call them, squishy moderates. And those folks just don't want to talk about politics right now because they know there's no place for them to find refuge in the Biden administration. There's nothing that they can hang their hat on in the Biden administration. The only thing that they can tell you is that they believe that Biden will save democracy, whatever that means. I have that written down as a topic point because I genuinely don't know what it means. Democracy is on the ballot. I genuinely don't know what that means. Democracy is the ballot. Democracy is the ballot. Suggesting that you have to vote for one candidate or over another to further democracy isn't democracy. That's Saddam Hussein. Remember back in the day when we were younger and the Iraq War was going on and George Bush, the elder, decided not to take out Saddam Hussein because he promised that he wouldn't. So he left him alone even after liberating Kuwait. And Saddam Hussein made this big dog and pony show of having elections that he won by 100% of the vote. 100% of the people went to the polls and voted for Saddam Hussein because if you didn't vote for Saddam Hussein, you would be killed. Apparently, that's the type of democracy that the Democrats are talking about that's, quote unquote, on the ballot. That if you believe in democracy, you have to vote for one person. If you don't believe in democracy. Does that make any sense to anyone? Not to me. 352, Supertalk 99.7 WTN. Stand by.
Hey everybody, Dan Mandis here. Got my first shipment of emergency food from My Patriot Supply. Gonna make these pancakes. Now you prepare and cook them just like regular pancakes. But thanks to this special packaging, they last for 25 years. So when things go wrong, you are eating right with My Patriot Supply. And yes, they taste great. Now every week, I'm going to introduce you to different food. My Patriot Supply is America's most trusted supplier of emergency food. Head on over to my website, preparewithmandis.com, right now and see all the different foods that they have and all the great specials as well. That's preparewithmandis.com. Be prepared for anything with My Patriot Supply and preparewithmandis.com.
4 o'clock, I'm Mac Morey with your top story. 65 degrees, partly cloudy, partly sunny in Nashville. Rain on the way. Traffic complete weather forecast coming up in 5 minutes. Some breaking news. The FBI and U.S. Attorney Henry C. Leventis just spoke on a case involving national concern this afternoon. It was on the third floor of the Fred Thompson U.S. Courthouse and Federal Building right here in Music City. Army Sergeant Corbin Schultz has been indicted for collecting and transmitting sensitive military information to a co-conspirator in China while also bribing an official. Leventis providing more details here.
The defendant is an Army intelligence analyst assigned to the 1st Battalion, 506 Infantry Regiment and stationed at Fort Campbell. He was arrested earlier today and will make his initial appearance in court tomorrow. As an intelligence analyst, the defendant had duties including serving as a custodian for confidential information and training others on the proper handling, storage, and dissemination of confidential information. As set out in the indictment, however, the defendant is charged with entering into a multi-year conspiracy to illegally exploit his access to national defense information for his own financial benefit. He traded our national defense information for cash.
They say it started in June of 2022 and that it included documents related to advanced fighter aircraft, advanced military helicopters, high mobility artillery rocket systems, and Chinese military tactics, including more information as well. They say in return, he received $42,000. Right now, staying in Tennessee, it's now the 11th day of the search for autistic 15-year-old Sebastian Rogers out of Sumner County. There are new developments. Kentucky State Police searching for in a landfill in Hopkins County where trash went from Rogers' neighborhood. Channel 4's Marissa Sulik has some more information.
About a dozen investigators are combing through the dirt and debris here. They are mainly looking in the front portion of this landfill. You can also see they're using an excavator to dig up that same area. Again, there's no evidence or information that indicates Sebastian could be here. Sumner County Sheriff's Office says this is a precautionary measure to eliminate any possible questions and options. Now, I did reach out to the Sumner County Sheriff's Office to see if they will have a press conference to give us any more information. They said they will not have one today as their main focus is looking for Sebastian.
The landfill is about an hour and a half north of Nashville. And some encouraging news for parents worried about their newborn getting RSV. Andy Field.
The new RSV immunization shot's only been available for 6 months, but the CDC says a study shows it's 90% effective in keeping infants out of the hospital with that respiratory disease. There's also a newly approved vaccine for pregnant women designed to pass the RSV immunity on to their newborn, and 2 recently approved RSV vaccines for older adults who are at higher risk.
And that is the latest news, traffic, and weather on the way. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
It is indeed The Drive. No Brian Wilson today. Matt Murphy in for Brian this afternoon. I appreciate you indulging me. Thank you so much. It's 4:07 and a good afternoon to all of you. Big State of the Union address tonight. Joe Biden getting ready, probably taking himself a nap to make sure that his energy level is what it should be. Coming up later on this hour on The Drive, we'll have Representative Scott Cepiki from the Tennessee House of Representatives to sit down with us, describing for all of you and answering any and all of your questions with regard to the education scholarship proposal that is before the Tennessee General Assembly right now. We'll also ask him about some activity that went on in the General Assembly earlier today that had some accusing him of violating the rules to the point that they wanted to censure him. That's up at 4:35 this afternoon on The Drive on SuperTalk 99.7 WTN. Right now, however, we turn our attention to our hotline where Representative John Rose awaits, obviously anticipating tonight's State of the Union address to give us a preview of what he expects. He joins us on The Drive with no Brian Wilson, Matt Murphy in for Brian. John, good afternoon. Good to speak with you again. I hope you're well, sir.
Good afternoon, Matt Murphy. Thanks for having me on The Drive today.
Always a pleasure, and you know what? I wish we were listening to someone different deliver the address tonight, but it is what it is. President Joe Biden offering his remarks about what he considers to be the State of the Union. I'll get into what you think he might say in a couple of minutes, but I'll ask you, Congressman John Rose, what do you believe is the current State of the Union?
I think it's pretty dismal. I think most of the important measures that Americans care about have gone in the wrong direction for the last 3 years. So in my mind, it's difficult to put a pretty face on what the president would have to talk about tonight, but that doesn't seem to deter him. And I think instead of trying to draw in those who might be skeptics, I think his probably primary task tonight is to try to bolster his support among his base. So I think you'll see him doubling, tripling down on some of the tired cliches that he's used, Bidenomics, some of the victories that he's had legislatively that have led to the runaway government spending, and trying to mischaracterize then the problems that he faces and blame them on Republicans or on the failure for Congress to act to support his failed agenda.
Well, Congressman, that goes to the heart of this conversation about inflation, our American economy. The president saw fit to speak in response to the Cookie Monster the other day, when the Cookie Monster was upset about shrinkflation. I've kind of gone over why shrinkflation exists. It's a matter of companies reacting to some of the ridiculous policies of the Biden administration, infusing essentially what I refer to as fake money into the system, devaluing the dollar and causing the price of goods and services to go up. As a result, we can't spend our way out of our inflation situation, can we?
We cannot. And unfortunately, the president, many of the people around him who, frankly, may be making the decisions, and unfortunately, many members of Congress, seem to think that you can just print money, borrow money incessantly, and that there'll be no impact. They even came up with a fancy name for it. They call it modern monetary policy, the idea that there isn't this this hard relationship between the supply of money and the price of goods and services. But it's pretty much standard day one economics fundamental that, the prices of goods and services is driven by the supply of money. And those two things work in tandem. And if there's a lot of money chasing a limited supply of goods and services, then you're going to have inflation. That's exactly what President Biden's policies created. And that's why we've had the most rampant inflation since I was a junior in high school.
It feels to me, and I want to get back to policy in just a moment, but before I delve more into that, it feels to me that this is a big moment for his campaign, as much as it is a big moment for the state of affairs in the United States of America, considering the concern amongst his base that he has reached the winter season of his public service. That's the nicest way I can say it, John. That he is perhaps too old to serve another 4 terms. They're putting a lot of eggs in this basket that he's going to perform well tonight for the better part of one would expect at least an hour on the main stage, if not more. It feels like there's a lot going on here with regard to his future on the campaign trail. Do you get that sense in Washington?
Absolutely, and I think it's a hard measure for him to live up to. I mean, obviously, as we've seen, and this is sad. I don't relish in saying this, but can the president navigate his way to the dais, and then can he read the speech that's been written for him without too many stumbles, without too many ad libs that take him off track, and expose perhaps the degree to which his intellect has been diminished, and so they've got to be worried about that, and I'm sure that he'll try to stick to the text of the speech, but sometimes that's difficult to do, and so then he's also got to be mindful of just his his demeanor, his appearance, the expressions on his face, all of which are telling given his condition. And it's a high bar for him. It's a high bar for his advisors, or, again, at risk of being unkind, saying his caregivers, as to whether or not they've got him ready for tonight's performance.
With that in mind, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has been open about his messaging to fellow Republicans. And speak to me about what he has said to the Republican members of the House of Representatives with regard to decorum within the body. I've been blessed with the opportunity to be a part of a State of the Union in the past, John, so I understand the numbers of people. It's a smaller room than you think it is on television, but obviously there are some. I don't believe that you, John Rose, would think for a moment to speak out against some of the nonsense that the president might be spewing from the podium, but some members have done so in the past, and it's my understanding the Speaker has cautioned members not to do that tonight.
Yes, and I would say he politely and professionally cautioned us in our conference meeting this week to remember who we are and to maintain decorum on the floor, and I would certainly encourage the members on both sides of the aisle to do that. Certainly we saw perhaps maybe the worst demonstration in modern time when the former speaker, as speaker, committed what really was a crime by tearing the official copy of the speech in half.
Right.
And that's probably the low watermark in recent history for lack of decorum on the floor. There's no place for that. We know it interferes. We're here, we've been entrusted with this awesome opportunity and responsibility to help lead our country, and the American people want to see us behave like adults and deal with the problems that face the country in a serious way. And certainly we've seen an illustration back in Tennessee for what happens when a handful of members decide to not follow those rules of decorum. If we were in charge, we're in charge in the House, we want that to be true. If we weren't, we should want that to be true equally so.
It's going to be difficult to listen to, and Congressman John Rose is with us, by the way, speaking on the State of the Union address tonight and other matters involving Washington, D.C. and the United States beyond. It's difficult to suggest that the economy is not the most front and center issue, but frankly, I don't think it is. I think the border has become a nationwide issue. It might be difficult to listen to the president try to work his way around the failures of his administration regarding the southern border. For 2.5 years, Congressman, we were told that the border wasn't really a problem, and Mayorkas insisted that it was secure. Now, suddenly, it's a problem, and I expect the president is going to try to blame you Republicans in the House. What is your response to the expectation of his conversation about the border tonight?
Well, I agree. I mean, the polling is pretty strong that it's the most important issue on the minds of the American people. Not clear if it will stay so as we move forward into this year and get closer to the election, but I think recent events have really framed this issue and forced the president, frankly, to finally go to the border, even though that was a pretty antiseptic visit that he took. And so, I think he has a hard time running from that, and particularly given his past comments and the past comments of his administration that clearly indicated that they didn't believe it was a problem. And perhaps, one of the things I spoke on the floor earlier today about the fact that the former chief of the Border Patrol, Raul Ortiz, in 2.5 years serving this president as chief of the Border Patrol, never once had a conversation with the president or with the vice president or so-called border czar. And I think that really underscores where this administration has been, and that is that they don't view this invasion at the southern border as a problem. They see it as a successful implementation of their policy. And And so you have to take that into account. I think now that it has become clear to them that politically it's a liability, you're going to see him try to pivot and blame Republicans. He's going to point to the so-called bipartisan Senate legislation that was drafted. But what we all know is that the president doesn't need new authority or new resources to get the border under control. Some of those things might be helpful if you were committed to getting the border under control, no doubt. But he has the power now, literally with the stroke of a pen, as former President Obama used to like to say. He could solve this problem. We know that because it was the 100 or so executive orders that he implemented in the early days of his administration that created this problem. And so they knew exactly what they were doing. They did it with intentionality. And so to now try to assert that somehow they need new power to solve the problem that they've created, I think is a little disingenuous. And I think the American people will see through that. We do have an obligation to message that, though, and make sure that they don't get confused, because the media will try to dissemble on that issue.
Our guest is Congressman John Rose, previewing the State of the Union address tonight. Obviously, John serving the 6th District of the great state of Tennessee. John, I want to ask you about a vote that you recently made, a no vote on the $432 billion what is being called a minibus. The omnibus would be the big, all 12 appropriations bills. I think this was 6 of the 12 voted to fund these things for the rest of the fiscal year leading into the election year. Tell me about your decision to vote no on this. And I believe, and I think I read in your press release, that you have all the respect in the world for the Speaker of the House, but you could not vote yes on this particular legislation.
That's right. And I think for everyone listening and to be sober about this was a step, and a meaningful step in the right direction in terms of reining in spending here in Washington and getting in place a process by which we hopefully will get control over the spending of our nation. However, so I would count it as a win, just like I counted last year's Fiscal Responsibility Act as a win for the conservative effort. But I want to see us run up the score, and I think we could have made it into a really meaningful win, much more meaningful than it was. And so I just didn't think it went far enough. And so I felt like the way that I have to communicate that is through my vote, and it's not a perfect way to do it, but I could only vote yes or no, and I felt like no sent a stronger message that this didn't go far enough. We are borrowing money at the rate of $1 trillion every 100 days, and that is just not sustainable, and we've got to start acting like this is a crisis. You don't need to if you're on the Titanic, a teaspoon is not going to work to solve the problem. You've got to get more radical, and that's why I voted no.
As you speak to your Republican colleagues who maybe share your no vote and share your frustration that we're not turning this large ship around swiftly enough, are they cautiously optimistic that we're moving in the right direction with the leadership of Speaker Johnson?
I think there is a cautious optimism. There is frustration, and there are lots of folks who want to move faster and would have liked to have seen more conservative policy writers in this bill as well, pushing back on the woke Biden agenda, which is just pervasive up here with the administration, the things that they're advancing. However, we did have wins, and we had a lot of defensive stops that perhaps will not be that well reported and maybe not really fully realized by the American people. But, if you could imagine where we would be if it was a Speaker Pelosi or Speaker Jeffries that was presiding over the House right now, it would be astonishing and I think very frustrating and discouraging what would have made it through. And so we have to keep that in mind, that there is a victory that we achieve by having a 2-seat majority and being able to run the House and choose what bills come to the floor.
John, good luck tonight. It's going to be difficult sitting through the lies, subterfuge, and deceit that comes from the podium, but I know you'll do a good job representing the 6th District. I appreciate you stopping by the drive today.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me on, and it's a great honor and privilege to represent the people of the 6th District of Tennessee.
Take care. There's John Rose joining us. That was on me. That's my bad. John Rose joining us for a few moments on the drive with Matt Murphy. No Brian today. We'll be back in a moment. Take some of your thoughts on that. A lot of you reflecting on the the overspending of the appropriations bill, if you're aware of that. We'll talk about that next on The Drive.
An Army sergeant indicted for allegedly sharing classified information with China in exchange for cash. And some money news. 4:30 Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, Mr. Marty. It is The Drive, Super Talk 99.7 WTN, 427 right now. Thanks again to Congressman John Rose spending some time with us, previewing the expectation of the State of the Union address. Look, I don't pretend that there are any halos in that body tonight in the House of Representatives chamber. I don't pretend that there are any little angels with angels' wings down there that are pristine and pure as the wind-driven snow. But I promise you this, if you love liberty and freedom, if you believe in the free market economy, if you believe in America defending itself from foreign invasion and being able to defend our southern border and our northern border alike, if you believe in those types of things, there are good guys and bad guys down there. Make no mistake about it. And Joe Biden will attempt to shade the event with claims that he's won all of these victories over the last couple of years, that he's not. We will see a presentation of a very two different Americas. And then in the aftermath of that, and then I want you to do this, and I normally would not ask you to do this, because it's a very awkward moment when, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, when the response comes. Because the president's got everything going for him, right? He's got the room full of people. Half of them are going to applaud him no matter what he says. He's got the audience and the gallery and the pomp and the circumstances, and everybody's trying to pat him on the back and shake his hand or whatnot. And then you juxtapose that with going to someone by themselves in a room with a camera, with no audience, with no applause, with nothing, and they have to respond to the presidential address. But tonight, Senator Katie Britt will do that. I happen to know Katie. I met her during her time as chief of staff for Senator Richard Shelby, and I knew her through her initial campaign for United States Senate to replace Richard Shelby. And I was trepidatious about Katie Britt, and I'll tell you why. Because she seemed to be the hand-selected successor for Richard Shelby's seat by Richard Shelby. And I didn't like that. I didn't like how Washingtonized Senator Shelby had become. He was a Republican, but Washingtonized nonetheless. However, I am happy to tell you that I was wrong when I was wrong. And my fears, at least, I don't know that I made any declaratory statement about Katie Britt, but my fear about her becoming Washingtonized or already being Washingtonized, being an establishment GOP senator, have not been yet realized. She's done a great job for her state and thus far has done a great job for the Republican Party and for the cause of freedom and liberty around America. And I expect her to do a great job tonight. And here's what I would say. If she does well tonight, she is moving forward a dark horse candidate for vice president of the United States. 42 years old. She checks a lot of boxes. I don't like to be the diversity guy, but I do think that there needs to be someone other than a white male as a selection as vice president, just based on certain dynamics and based on certain pools of voters that are shifting dramatically more to the Republican Party. So we shall see. But just watch her tonight after the State of the Union address. We're going to turn our attention to state politics coming up right after the newscast. Representative Scott Cepiki is in the House. Now, Scott is my go-to guy with all questions involving the scholarship fund or the scholarship plan, the school choice plan as it's also known. And so if you have any questions about school choice in the state of Tennessee, if you have any questions about the ability to take your kids out of a failing public system and put them in perhaps a private system with the assistance of a scholarship, now's your time to ask those questions and have them answered at 615-737-9986. We'll do that next on Super Talk.
.431, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now at 65 degrees, partly cloudy, expecting some showers later on tonight. Got a weather forecast, traffic report just ahead, 5 minutes. Right now in Tennessee, the FBI and attorney Henry Levantis announced an indictment to Army Sergeant Corbin Schultz for sharing classified information with China. Channel 4's Sharon Dankwa brings us more information.
Schultz is being accused of getting and sharing national defense information, bribing a public official, and more. They say Schultz has shared documents, maps, plans, notes, and photographs with a Chinese conspirator. Now, Schultz is being paid $42,000 in 14 installments for sharing this information.
Some of the information he shared included documents related to advanced fighter aircraft, advanced military helicopters, intercontinental ballistic missiles, high-mobility artillery rocket systems, and Chinese military tactics. Schultz will appear in court tomorrow morning. Now over to some money news. Daria Albinger.
Stocks continue to rise and set a new record. The Dow rose 130 points, the Nasdaq added 242, and the S&P closed up 53 at an all-time high. The market's reacting to Fed Chair Jerome Powell's comment to a House committee this week that it still planned to cut interest rates this year, but was waiting for more signs that inflation is heading toward its 2% target. Powell told a Senate committee that its sweeping bank regulatory proposal will be significantly revised by year's end. It would require the largest banks with more than $100 billion in assets to hold more funds in reserve to protect against bad loans and other potential losses. Big banks had pushed back, saying the rule would limit their ability to lend. Gum makers are trying to figure out what will get us chewing again. Wrigley's is trying to reposition it as a stress reliever, a concentration aid, and a breath freshener, of course.
And that is the latest news, traffic, and weather on the way. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Hey everybody, Dan Mandis here. Got my first shipment of emergency food from My Patriot Supply. Gonna make these pancakes. Now you prepare and cook them just like regular pancakes. But thanks to the special packaging, they last for 25 years. So when things go wrong, you are eating right with My Patriot Supply. And yes, they taste great. Now every week, I'm going to introduce you to different food. My Patriot Supply is America's most trusted supplier of emergency food. Head on over to my website, preparewithmandis.com, right now and see all the different foods that they have and all the great specials as well. That's preparewithmandis.com. Be prepared for anything with My Patriot Supply and preparewithmandis.com.
Super Talk 99.7 WT, and I'm trying to come back in on the drive without laughing, without giggling. I just looked down at my phone as I was coming back. It's 4:39, Super Talk 99.7. My name is not Brian Wilson. I am Matt Murphy, in for Brian Wilson. Normally you hear me from noon until 3 on a daily basis. I'll be back there tomorrow, and Brian will be back right here. The reason I'm laughing, Weber, is apparently Mandis is up from his nap, and he's just catching up. Matt just said you're going on a Disney cruise. And he said, I hate you. No, the reason I said this is because this was the text exchange. Earlier today, I was like, you guys all need to tell Mandis that you heard he's going on a Disney cruise. And I stand by that statement. I said, is your vacation next week? He said, yes. I said, is this the cruise? And his response was, it's not a Disney cruise. Well, I didn't ask you if it was a Disney cruise, but apparently a lot of people are assuming. And then he said, for all the idiots accusing me of being a socialist. And so he apparently just tuned in or just woke up, and he said, I hate you. I'm sick of your... Wait. No. He said, you've sicked your Disney-hating minions on me.
Minions aren't Disney, by the way. Just for the record.
I know, and we like Minions, right? I mean, Minions are okay. All right, more on that later on. We've got more important fish to fry with Representative Scott Cepiki, who joins me on a weekly basis during my midday show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN, keeps me up to date with what's going on in the General Assembly. Good to have you on in the afternoon on the drive, Scott.
It's a new time slot for me.
Yeah, it's nice. Okay, so there was some activity on the floor of the House today. I want to get to this because I think this is a little bit of a quick hitter, and we can get to the more important stuff. Apparently, there was a verbal altercation on the floor of the House of Representatives that led to one member calling on your censure. There was a vote taken. That censure measure was defeated soundly, I might add. But tell me what precipitated this and what happened.
Well, there was it was basically two men expressing their opinions about a issue, the academic success of Metro Nashville schools, and Representative Clemens and myself had a differing opinion on what that meant, and we both expressed our opinions in a rather heated way. It was just men being men. 25, 30 years ago, Matt, this was just nothing. It was just men being men. And some members on the House floor, I guess, didn't understand that about what it is to be a man. And so they took a motion to censor me. And as you said, it was overwhelmingly defeated. And there were there were 16 votes to censor me, and there's 24 Democrats.
So at least some of the Democrats did not think this rose to the level.
Correct.
What was the disagreement about?
It was a disagreement on Representative Hemmer had a resolution recognizing the success of Metro Nashville schools on growth of being one of the two best in the country, and we felt the academic scores of Metro Nashville wouldn't do that properly reflectively in the resolution, that those growth scores and the proficiency scores of their students don't match up, and we thought it was just improper to recognize that. So we were just going to send it back to Calendar and Rules and talk to the bill sponsor about it and see if we can maybe possibly change some language in it.
All right, so this was a resolution praising the Metro Nashville school system for their good work?
That's correct, on growing kids.
And you, like a reasonable, rational human being, thought, better of that.
Well, as a chairman of education.
And that's my opinion on it. But
well, as a chairman of education, Matt, I know the numbers.
I know you do.
And the academic numbers of Metro Nashville are nothing to write home about. And so to honor them on the House floor with their lack of academic progress on the grades of their students, when we got high schools on their TCAP scores that are measuring as a school, Matt, in English language arts and math, less than 5% of that school is proficient. We have elementary schools less than 5% proficient. We have middle schools less than 5% proficient. To me, that is not an honor.
So you felt like, as chair of ed and as a member of the House, that it would be
improper,
disingenuous? Is that a fair word?
I guess that's fair.
And John Ray Clemens is the other representative involved, and it upset him. And so you guys had some words, and then we move on.
He argued his point. I argued my point. We've already shaken hands and apologized to each other. There was no malice intent there. It was just
a heated moment.
Yeah, he was it was men being men, and so it's a big nothing there. We got more important things to do, like trying to change education in Tennessee.
So what are we calling this now? I've heard choice. I've heard scholarship. What do you, as chair of ed in the House, call the bill that we're about to talk about?
The Education Freedom Act.
Okay. And explain to those who are just joining the party, just trying to get up to speed with what the state of Tennessee is attempting to do, or some in the state of Tennessee attempting to do, what would this accomplish?
I will try to condense 4.5 hours of debate into 1 minute. How's that?
Okay.
Basically, the House's version is very simple. We do have a school choice provision for those parents who believe that their students are trapped in a failing school, and they could access a $7,000 scholarship plus a couple extra dollars to use that money to help pay for tuition at a private school of their choice, as long as the private school is willing to participate. We have some guardrails put in place. We have some income qualifications that people who are most economically disadvantaged go first. And if there's still remaining scholarships, you filter through those tiers until everybody in the state of Tennessee could apply for it. Universal school choice, right? There are some guardrails on who can qualify as a school, that you have to be around for 3 years to prevent all those pop-up schools that we saw in other states that just milked the system for money. I think we've done a very good job on the House side, especially, of putting the guardrails into a school choice bill that I'm telling you other states are watching what we're doing. Now, there's a part 2 to this bill. Since I've been up in the General Assembly for the last 6 years, we have heard from teachers and administrators and school systems about how they feel like they're being stifled in education. And so what the House decided to do was use the school choice vehicle and do things in our public schools that allow them the educational freedom on their side to educate our kids to get better test scores and better results, such as trying to attract more teachers into the teaching profession by boosting what the state matches, 45% of healthcare, bumping it to 60%. That would free up more money for the districts to reinvest with their teachers in their classrooms. We put changes into the TISA funding system to where if you're sparse or rural or a low population county, you could pull down extra money for your schools. We put $75 for every student across the state. What's the number one issue with schools right now is maintenance. Every student will pull down a stipend of $75 to be used for maintenance of their schools. We've looked at testing, right? We've heard that we overtest. How many times have I told you that? We've looked at reducing our testing numbers in our public schools to where now we're just doing the federal mandate. We're cutting almost half of our tests out, which is going to free up about 400 hours of teaching hours in our schools. We've looked at the evaluations of teachers and slowing them down a little bit. We've looked at chronic absenteeism and trying to come up with a fix for that. But also, and I want to make this perfectly clear, we have put in the bill at the request of homeschoolers that they are excluded in every way possible.
I was told the other day on that point that homeschoolers operate in an umbrella fashion as some version of a private school. I didn't really understand it as it was being told to me.
Yes.
Do you understand what that means?
Sure do. So there's the traditional homeschooler that mom's at home or dad's at home and they're teaching the kids at home.
Right.
There's also an umbrella school. It could be a private school that they allow homeschoolers to come to that school and learn certain classes maybe, right, that the parent doesn't feel adequate teaching. we just dropped an amendment on because homeschoolers let us know that there was that possible loophole for the church-related schools.
Right.
So yesterday in the Education Committee, we cleaned that part up, and it was a two-part resolution. The first part addressed traditional homeschoolers being at home, being ineligible to participate, which is what they requested. And then those in the umbrella schools are now ineligible to participate, therefore giving them the protection of government not being able to get into their business.
So we've heard from some conservative groups around the state, and this is my last question. I want to get to as many of your questions as possible, by the way, with Representative Scott Cepiki, who knows more about this issue than anyone else, I think, in the General Assembly right now. 615-737-9986. If you have any questions about the scholarship plan, get them in here. So conservative voices, I'm not worried about the liberals who are suggesting this is going to destroy private. I mean, public schools need to be lifted up, and competitive forces can do that, and we've discussed that at length. But there are conservatives that are concerned that this gives the state an ability to more control private education through money. And I want you to address those concerns.
Absolutely. And that's one of the thoughts we had is, okay, so if you have a public school kid that's going to go to a private school, well, we have to have a way to figure out that kid's doing well. So what we did is we came up with a system that if a private school accepts a student, they accept Matt Murphy, right? All we're going to ask them to do is whatever tests you give Matt in his grade level, report those to an independent third party that keeps separation between government and the private schools. Matt Murphy's test scores are reported to the third party. Third party cannot sell, cannot distribute, cannot do anything with Matt's information except disseminate all that. Let's say, Matt, you're a fourth grader, right? Take all the fourth grade information, all those test scores across the state of Tennessee, and then give those test scores to the Department of Education and the education committees of the House and Senate so we can track the academic progress in the macro of the students across Tennessee that are taking advantage of this, so we can look at the academic success of the program, which is a taxpayer. What's your return on investment? Kids getting educated.
Can private schools themselves decline to accept the scholarships?
Absolutely.
So if a private school says, we don't want any part of this,
they're out.
Because we feel like, the government says there's no strings attached, but we're worried about strings in the future, they don't have to do it.
That's correct.
Okay. Nathan is first up this afternoon out of Lebanon with a question about the system. Hello, Nathan. Good afternoon. You're on with Scott Cepiki.
Hi, good afternoon. My question was around, and you might have just sort of answered it, but around safeguards that will prevent the program from becoming a for-profit grab, to where you'll end up having a bunch of charter schools pop up, and ultimately the quality of education decreases in that. I've spoken with some people in other states that have similar programs, and while on paper it looks really good and sounds really good, the execution was poor, and it actually didn't improve the education the children are receiving. So I was just really wondering around those safeguards to make sure that the money and the program's not being abused.
All right, Nathan, I'm gonna let you go. You keep listening online, and Scott will answer the question.
So the first part is about charter schools. Charter schools are public schools already. They go through the Charter Commission. This bill doesn't address them at all. There's a process already that charter schools go through to be approved by the local LEAs, local school boards, and then they're just a normal public school. There's no issue there. On the safeguards we put in place was we've noticed in Arizona we had all these little micro schools, the Matt Murphy School of Education pop up. They're there for 2 years. They collect all this money, and then they run, right? What we put in place is a safeguard there that says, unable to participate in this program, you have to be in existence in Tennessee for 3 years academically, be able to show your academic success, and then be accredited by the state of Tennessee. So now we put a safeguard in there to say, no. No pop-ups everywhere. You got to show your dedication to Tennessee that you're going to build a facility, start taking students that don't have the scholarship, and show a track record of success, and then you'd be approved by the State Board of Education.
8726 on our members nutrition super text line says the government money always comes with strings attached sooner or later. This is not a conservative measure. It is a mainstream Republican government entitlement to buy votes pushed by the rhino PACs and organizations. 8726, I'm offering that for Scott Cepiki's response.
Yeah, the answer is unequivocally not. We already have this process in place, Matt. It's called the Hope Scholarship. kids that want to go to college, they can qualify for the Hope Scholarship. They can go to a public institution and go to a private institution. And as far as I know, it hasn't affected the private colleges and universities in the state of Tennessee. And let me tell you something: we have record enrollment in our public institutions of higher learning in the state of Tennessee. We have safeguards we've put in place by looking at the Arizonas of the world, looking at the missteps of Florida.
Can you stick around for a segment right after 5 o'clock? Can you stick around?
As long as you're buying dinner.
Okay, sure. I'll do that. I'll sacrifice one for the team. Donuts out of the break room for everybody. It's 4:53 on the drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Hey everybody, Dan Mandis here. Got my first shipment of emergency food from My Patriot Supply. Gonna make these pancakes. Now you prepare and cook them just like regular pancakes. But thanks to the special packaging, they last for 25 years. So when things go wrong, you are eating right with My Patriot Supply. And yes, they taste great. Now every week, I'm going to introduce you to different food. My Patriot Supply is America's most trusted supplier of emergency food. Head on over to my website, preparewithmandis.com, right now and see all the different foods that they have and all the great specials as well. That's preparewithmandis.com. Be prepared for anything with My Patriot Supply and preparewithmandis.com.
5 o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top story. 64 degrees on Music Row and expecting showers later on tonight and into tomorrow and even into the start of our weekend on Saturday. We'll let you know all about it. Complete weather forecast plus a traffic report coming up in 5 minutes. Starting with some news right here in Tennessee, the FBI and U.S. Attorney Henry Levantis just spoke on a case involving national concern this afternoon. It happened on the third floor of the Fred Thompson U.S. Courthouse and Federal Building in Nashville. Army Sergeant Corbin Schultz has been indicted for collecting and transmitting sensitive military information to a co-conspirator in China while also bribing an official. Levantis speaking on the matter.
The defendant is an Army intelligence analyst assigned to the 1st Battalion, 506 Infantry Regiment and stationed at Fort Campbell. He was arrested earlier today and will make his initial appearance in court tomorrow. As an intelligence analyst, the defendant had duties including serving as a custodian for confidential information and training others on the proper handling, storage, and dissemination of confidential information. As set out in the indictment, however, the defendant is charged with entering into a multi-year conspiracy to illegally exploit his access to national defense information for his own financial benefit. He traded our national defense information for cash.
They say it started in June of 2022 and that it included documents related to advanced fighter aircraft, advanced military helicopters, intercontinental ballistic missiles, high mobility artillery rocket systems, defensive missile systems, and Chinese military tactics. They say in return, he received $42,000 in 14 installments. Right now in Tennessee, it's now the 11th day of the search for the autistic 15-year-old Sebastian Rogers out of Sumner County. There are some new developments. Kentucky State Police searching a landfill in Hopkins County where trash went from Rogers' neighborhood. The Sumner County Sheriff's Office says, quote, "There's no specific information that indicates evidence related to the search for Sebastian may be there, but rather it's an investigative precautionary measure to eliminate possible options and questions." And over in California, an emergency landing in L.A. today for a United Airlines Boeing 777 after a tire fell off as the plane was taking off from San Francisco heading to Osaka. The tire landed in an employee parking lot and luckily did not hurt anyone. Alex Stone described the scene watching the plane come in for a safe landing at LAX with 245 people aboard.
The giant Boeing 777 tire fell off the plane as it lifted off from San Francisco. The tire landed in an employee parking lot. Luckily, it did not injure anybody when it came off. The 777 has 13 other tires. Instead of heading to Osaka, the plane flew down the coast of California to LAX, where firefighters were waiting for it. 245 people were on board the 22-year-old aircraft. It landed safely, minus the missing left main landing gear tire.
And that is the latest news. Traffic and weather are on the way. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
And a good afternoon. It is 5:07. My name is Matt Murphy, and for Brian Wilson this afternoon. Normally, you hear me from noon until 3 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Oftentimes, I'll shift right over to the drive in the absence of Mr. Wilson. He'll be back tomorrow at 3 o'clock sharp, or thereabouts, I should say. We've got 2 more hours to go this afternoon, anticipating the presidential State of the Union address tonight. Excerpts have now been released, as they are wont to do out of Washington, D.C. They start leaking in drips and drabs in the hopes that the mainstream media outlets will pump the speech up to get as many eyeballs on the thing as possible. A lot of folks, conservatives and liberals alike, will be watching, and for a lot of different reasons, right? I mean, obviously, liberals want to watch because they want to hear the fantasy. Conservatives want to watch because they want to watch Joe Biden fall down, go boom. Which happens? Well, I think we'll probably get something in the mushy middle between those two extremes. In the meantime, we've got Representative Scott Cepiki, who had agreed to stay for an additional segment because so many of you had questions regarding the Tennessee Freedom Scholarship Plan. I think I screwed that up, but Scott Cepiki will repair it as we welcome him back to the drive. Thank you for sticking around for another segment.
My pleasure. It's the Education Freedom Act.
There you go. Education Freedom Act. It is the much discussed, what we refer to, us plebes refer to as a scholarship plan to give parents tools in their educational toolbox to remove their kids out of a public situation that they are uncomfortable with and give them a better ability from a financial standpoint to get their children in a private educational opportunity that would better suit their needs. Is that a fair way of putting it?
And transforming public education.
In addition to that, which doesn't get as much conversation as the front end piece, but very important.
Motion to approve.
There are many, many questions.
Go ahead.
So I'm going to get right to them, as I promised I would. James is next in Nashville with a question for Representative Scott Cepiki. James, you're on. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my call. Just had a question about the $7,000. So say a family or child gets that $7,000 and they go, they change schools, go to that private school. But say a month in or whatever, they don't like it, or they unfortunately may come to part ways from the school. Who gets the $7,000? Is it prorated? Do they get it at the beginning, or do they get it at the end, or do they actually get that $7,000 in their pockets? How would that work?
Yeah, no, good question. Thank you, James. And you keep listening, and Scott, you answer.
James, that's a great question. What we do is we don't fund up front on this. We fund in either quarterly or fifths. So every month and a half, as they take the attendance and send it back into the state, we release another portion of the payment on this, $7,000. So like you said, let's say 2 or 3 months in, something happens, and the private school and the student break ways and they go back to the public education, we automatically stop the payments right there because we track the payment based off the attendance of where the kid's going to school.
And the money will go to the school itself. It will not go through the parent.
That is correct.
Let's talk to Heather, who is next in Nashville with a question for Representative Cepiki. Hey, Heather. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So first, I want to make the point that I don't think you're going to fix the public schools by taking the money away and sending it into the private sector. I think there's a lot to be fixed in the public schools, and if we would focus on making them more like private schools, then that would be a better step. My second concern is that most of the private schools in Nashville are, stay fully have full attendance. They don't have a lot of openings every year. So it seems like to me the people that you're trying to help, people that might want to get out of the public schools, there's not even going to be an opening for them, and the people that are going to get to take advantage of the $7,000 are the ones that are already spending the money in the private schools, if they qualify for that. And not that they don't deserve to have some of their tax dollars, their school money spent in the private schools, but I think it seems like it's not really going to help the ones that it's meant to help. And then my last concern, somebody was on yesterday that sounded like he knew what he was talking about. Don't know if he did or not, but was saying that it's a separate budget line. It doesn't actually come out of the educational budget, so you're not actually pulling anything from the public schools, but you are funding this as a separate line item into the private schools.
Heather, do you want to hold on while Scott answers some of these questions? I want you to hold there because just in case you might have a follow-up. Go ahead, Scott.
So first of all, there is no taking of money away from public schools. The way we fund our public schools, they take attendance at the end of the year in May. And let's say a school system has 12,000 kids. When we do the budget for the next budget year for that school system, we are going to send them based off of the 12,000 kids. So they're going to get that funding for that year, no matter if the kid's there or not. If they go to be a homeschooler, they're going to get their 12,000 kids funded. So they have a year of transitional time there to account for the coming and goings of homeschoolers right now, kids going to private school right now, or kids just graduating or moving out, right? So there's a transitional time there. We have done, and you made up a great point. That is why the other things in the bill on public school are there. We've looked at the advantages. I'm sorry, Matt. We looked at the advantages of what private schools have over public schools right now. And so we've incorporated a lot of those things to create more time for teaching, less testing and evaluation. So our teachers are getting paid to do what they went to school over, is teaching the kids. And then lastly, about the income, we have to really do a good job in Tennessee. And we saw what happened in Florida when they did it. There was a huge investment in the private school sector that started to build private schools across the state of Tennessee. Well, across the state of Florida.
Right.
And what we're hoping is through the diocese and the church-related schools that we have people come to Tennessee and invest in education in Tennessee in the private side to increase that capacity like you spoke of in your call, so that there are opportunities for more kids to take advantage of that across the state.
Heather, does that answer your question, or do you have a follow-up there?
Well, it does, except that it still doesn't seem like that's going to fix the private schools. And if we've got more students coming into the private schools, then there's still just as much money going. Just as into the public schools, there's just as much money going into the public schools. Where does the extra money come from that's going to fund all this?
Well, what I would think is that competition, increasing the level of competition within the system, would encourage and incentivize more private schools in the system.
Absolutely. And what happens, if you look at Florida as a test case, those initial 2 or 3 years, we saw that big investment in the private sector. But what we also saw is because as those kids started to transition into the private schools, the classroom sizes started to drop in the public schools, which started to be more of a reflection of what you see in the private, and then the public school test scores started to take off.
Any final thoughts, Heather?
Well, just that and 7,000 is probably not going to get you in any of the private schools. So unless the parents that are struggling in the public schools are willing to pay the extra or can come up with a budget to pay the extra, then I don't see them benefiting. Anyway,
it's a fair point, Scott. That's $7,000.
That's a great question. And so the way private schools work is that $7,000. Let's say the tuition is $15,000, right? Well, right now there are families sitting at home that say, I cannot afford $15,000. And even if I get a partial half scholarship from that school, we're still at $7,500. I can't afford that. But if we can give them the $7,000, and now they only have the $8,000 left, they can get a scholarship for half of that. And now it's only $4,000, and parents might be able to figure out how to swing that.
But because while it comes from ultimately the scholarship fund, the private schools would look at that as a parental contribution.
That's correct. So it opens the door for more people who would like to take advantage of it, but they can't figure out how to make the ends meet. This opens the door for them.
This is an opportunity for any of you. We've got another 5 minutes or so for anyone with questions. Scott Cepiki knows more about this issue than anyone that I know, and he has an ability to answer your questions right now on the drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Big deal for a lot of parents around the state of Tennessee. 615-737-9986. Matthew is next up. Matthew, you're up with Scott Cepiki and Matt Murphy. Good afternoon, sir.
How you doing, gentlemen?
How you doing?
You're good. So Heather's question kind of plays into the one I've got, and I'm going to try to articulate this in a way you can understand. So right now, this coming year is going to be approximately 20,000 scholarships, correct?
Correct.
So we got 96 counties. Let's just say it's an average of 200 per county. How is that going to create real competition? And I know in the beginning it might not, but when will those numbers grow to 50 or 100,000 kids? Because I kind of feel like doing the math, that would be the number of scholarships it would take to really create competition in which would force public schools to get better.
All right. First off, Matthew, it sounds like you have a liberal in the background. I'm just kidding. That's a joke.
She's 3 months old.
Oh, you got your hands
Gotta
full.
cut her some slack.
That's. I'm gonna let you handle that, Matthew. You keep listening, and I'm gonna let Scott answer the question on that.
Well, that's a great question. And so in the House version, we know we can't let this get out of hand like they did in Arizona, where it's $1 billion in year 2. We can't do that.
Because they didn't cap it, right?
That's correct. And so what we've done in the House version is we have to grow this slowly so we can track the academic progress of the students. If you look at all the data out there, it normally takes until year 4 or 5. When you take a student from a failing school in a public situation and you put them into that high rigor discipline of a private school, there's an acclimation time there. They have to get used to their new environment, their new testing environment, their new expectations. Normally what you see in year 4 and 5, those students now that went to that private school are outperforming their peers where they came from. So that's a benefit for us. But what we did in Tennessee is we started with 20,000 scholarships. Once capacity usage hits within 10% of 20, we will bump it 20% the next year. And we'll grow this thing, but we're going to grow it in a way that we can track the academic progress and make sure it doesn't blow up our budget.
A lot of questions about why wouldn't this just create a dynamic by which the private schools would raise their tuition.
So that's one of the things that we're going to be watching very closely out there. And here's the message, and I'm going to take the liberty here to relay this message to everybody, is that we're going to watch abuse and fraud on this. And if you start to use this $7,000 and start to just add $7,000 to your scholarship, then we're going to have some conversations from the state.
So you're not going to try to do anything penal on the front end, but you're going to watch for the possibility of abuse on the back.
And that's why we have the comptroller involved.
John is next. John, thank you for your call. Good afternoon. You're on with Scott Cepiki. What's your question or comment?
Yeah, I had a comment. I think what the prior lady that was on the phone talking about, she doesn't think it's going to help the issue. I think what she was trying to say is the acceptance rates of private schools. Like, what about the capacities? Because I think that's some of the limitation of why. I mean, there is, at some schools quite a lengthy private, waiting list. Just because you give them money and enable them to apply, wouldn't that just bog down the system and follow on? Like, if it does bog down the system, there is some delay as getting where the system needs to be.
No, I think it's a good question, and I want to broaden it out. Do we have any idea about what open seat capacity is right now with private education?
Roughly, we're looking across the state of Tennessee somewhere between probably 7,000 and 11,000 open seats right now.
Okay, so you'll definitely need to see more seats open up,
more capacity. But there's never been that I guess urging of the economic status, right? Of, hey, there's more people now that can come into private schools. So now the diocese or your church schools, right, the Father Ryans and stuff, now they can sit there and go, okay, we can open this up now and we can invest in our school to provide more capacity. That was the main challenge that you saw in Florida, was in year 1 when they rolled this out, their capacity was stagnant. In year 2, we started to get more people on board. In year 3 and 4, that's when the investments in the finishing of the private schools started to happen, and then capacity really took off, and that's when you saw those academic success stories start, not only in the private sector now, but also now in the public schools.
All right, I'm locking the door for one more 5-minute segment with Scott Cepiki, only because we have a full bank of telephone calls and a lot of questions to get to. It's 521 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. You're listening to The Drive.
Army secrets sold to China. A 26-year-old now dead after being knocked unconscious outside of a bar on Demumbrium Street. And we've got a growing threat of anti-Semitism, according to Attorney General Merrick Garland. We'll let you know about it. 5:30 Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
And by the way, for those of you anxiously anticipating Mac Morey's wide world of sports, it's my apology that I offer to Mac Morey and all of you listeners when I tell you that we're going to present the wide world of sports at 5:35. But with this, there's going to be some extended wide world of sports. So I apologize to Mac Morey, but you know what? I try to get to the listening audience, and they're asking these questions. Scott Cepiki's here. We locked the door on him. So we got about 4 more minutes with Scott Cepiki. We're going to go rapid fire with as many questions as we can with your permission, Scott. And we'll get to Mark, who is in Lebanon, with a question for Representative Cepiki. Mark, go right ahead, sir.
Yes, sir. I just had a real comment to it. It's not so much a thing. Basically, what I was saying was when you're talking about these funds that you're putting into private schools, I have family, most of my family, my wife, they're all in the education system all over Tennessee, so I'm really familiar with this. I think it's great that you're doing this, and I think that it does create a better system, but you got to realize you're fighting against a entrenched system that is very, very wasteful, extremely wasteful. And the kids that come out, like my children, they go to a magnet school that is, I mean, basically, it's a school that was built in the 1940s, extremely old. But the one thing you notice about it is parental involvement. And I think that's what your bill and what it does is it causes the parents to desire to be more involved in that child's education. And like my wife will tell you, if the parents are not involved, you can't drop your kids off in kindergarten and think you're going to get a rogue scholar when they leave the 12th grade.
Absolutely key to understanding the legislation.
Bingo. There you go, right there.
And you pointed out during the break that obviously the private component is one part of this, but there's also a lot of other parts of this involving improving the public side.
Creating that opportunity for our public schools to be more of a reflection of a private school.
All right, Kathy, you're next in Springfield. Rapid fire with Scott Cepiki. Hey, Kathy, how are you?
I'm fine. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
I had two comments. The first one, I think you addressed it a little bit, but I know that families that struggle a little bit, one of their biggest challenges is transportation. And we live in Robertson County where there's not many private school options here. That would really prohibit a lot of people that struggle financially to be able to even take advantage of something like that. You did mention in Florida that over time that, schools pop up, and I'm all for competition, which kind of brings me to the second part of my comment and question is that with money going to these schools, these private schools from the state, are they going to be held to the same accountability measures that our public schools are held to when it comes to testing and all the requirements that the state requires for our public schools?
The short answer, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The short answer on that is no, because we don't want to affect the environment of those private schools, but enable for those schools to be accredited. There are certain things that they have to do to gain accreditation, which is one of the things is testing for English language, arts and math, science, history, ACT. So we have the ability to track that. Like I said before, with a student that takes advantage of the scholarship and they go to a private school, we'll be able to track that academic progress now in regards to the peer group that they're in now in more rigor, more intensity to see their academic success, which will show us the overall success of the program. And by the way, on transportation issues, in the tuition and fees that you pay at some private schools, they do have bus routes that they run.
Kathy, thank you for the call. I appreciate your answer there. So her question, are you going to increase testing? No. I mean, there are certain metrics that the private institutions have to meet. None of that's going to change.
And the thing we're doing is, in the other parts of the bill, is we're reducing the testing in the public schools to have a more mirror effect of what they do in the private schools to create that competition.
One more quick one with Scott Cepiki before we have to say goodbye and head off to the news. It is Nee's turn. I believe that's correct, N-E-E. Hello, Nee. Or nay?
Yes. I'm here. My question is, what about the kids that are left in the public schools, like the unmotivated kids or the parents that don't care enough to fill out the paperwork to get them the scholarship? If they're left in the public schools, then the test scores for the public schools are not going to be good.
It's a perfect question. It's a great question, Nay, and I'm going to let you continue to listen online. Does this not? I would ask it in a slightly different way. Is this not going to have the effect of further separating the haves and the have-nots?
No, I don't believe so, because what you're going to see is what you saw in other states is once the public schools realize that there is another avenue for parents to have access to education, then they start to look inward at themselves on how they can improve their product and how they're going to deliver it. That's one of the things that we've done on the public school side of the bill, was to give them more flexible and autonomy in their teaching during the day, and on evaluations to free up the teachers more to do those things that the private schools do in the educational day, to start to turn these public schools around and make them little schools of expertise, so that now the kids are getting the education they need.
And, and public and private are different in that regard, in that public's going to be a little more behind the eight ball in terms of testing and grading, because, they're taking all comers more so than the private education.
But what they saw in Florida, Matt, was very interesting. Is as the parents found out that they weren't able to get a spot, those parents got engaged in those public schools, saying, okay, if I'm going to be here, then we're going to get this thing turned around. And the parent engagement, which is the key, what one of the callers said, the parental engagement in our public schools is going to escalate, which is going to get us better results.
Representative Scott Cepiki, thank you for the hour.
See you next week.
There's an hour with Scott Cepiki answering all of your questions regarding this very, very important matter. It's 5:32 on Super Talk.
.532, I'm Mac Maury with your top story. 63 degrees in Nashville. A traffic report and a weather forecast in 5 minutes. An Army soldier at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, has been charged with selling military secrets to China. The Justice Department says the soldier worked as an intelligence analyst at the base. U.S. Attorney Henry Levantis in Nashville announced the multi-count indictment today.
Charging United States Army Sergeant Corbin Schultz with conspiracy to unlawfully communicate defense information, unlawful export of defense articles to China, conspiring to unlawfully export defense articles to China, and bribery of a public official.
They say it started in June of 2022 and that it included documents related to advanced fighter aircraft, advanced military helicopters, high mobility artillery rocket systems, and Chinese military tactics. Officials say in return he received $42,000. Right now in Tennessee, 26-year-old Austin Turner has died after getting knocked unconscious outside of Tin Roof Bar on Demumbrian Street. New charges may be filed on security guard 36-year-old Cornelius Richard. Happened at the Tin Roof Bar, which released a statement saying they're cooperating fully with investigators and condolences to Turner's family. Attorney General Merrick Garland addressed the growing threat of anti-Semitism in the United States and abroad today in a speech to the Anti-Defamation League. Andy Field.
Attorney General Merrick Garland knew the anti-Semitism other American Jewish families faced. He says his Justice Department has seen those threats triple in the last year. And as for those numbers,
they do not capture the fear of Jewish Americans that any sign of our identity could make us the target of an attack.
The Attorney General saying his prosecutors are pursuing all hate threats against Jews, Muslims, and other religious groups.
And that is the latest news. Weather and traffic next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Alrighty, then it's 5:40. Super Talk 99.7 WTN and The Drive. Brian Wilson out today, back tomorrow. Matt Murphy in today, back in my normal slot between noon and 3 tomorrow. And already I'm screwing things up. I'm screwing the format of The Drive up. And it's for me to apologize to you. Not just to you, but to Chris Weber, who's back there behind the glass, trying to make sure that all the hamsters move in the proper direction. I apologize to each of you who I know faithfully tune in at 5:25 every afternoon. Today it happens at 5:41 for Mac Morey's wild, wacky, wonky, weird, wonderful
Spanning the globe
world of
to bring
sports.
you the constant variety of
I think I got that right.
Close enough.
Yeah.
That's good.
And the
agony of defeat. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for Mac Morey's Wild Wide World of Sports with the one and only Mac Morey.
Oh, yeah.
What's our extended version? I'm giving you a little more time. Let it
Appreciate
breathe. Let it breathe a little
Yeah,
bit.
slow
there
it
you go.
down.
There
Really
you go.
dive in. There's so much to talk about.
There you go. I didn't want Cepiki to push me around or hit me for getting him out of the studio so
I was
quickly,
scared.
You know?
I was scared. He's
And it
very
was-
aggressive.
You know,
Did you stop by the vending machine on the way out so you could pay off your...
I gave him one of the honey buns out of the freezer. You know why those honey buns are in the freezer, by the way?
I didn't know we
Because they're
had them.
like years old,
They pulled them out of the vending machine because they had expired,
Yeah.
and they put them on the counter, and so someone put them in
You're
the freezer.
lying. No.
I'm not lying.
I mean,
I think
that's-
that I'm sure they'd be fine.
freezer preserves.
That is quintessential radio station
That's
right there.
that's what I'm told. Maybe we could try one toward the end of the show. See what happens.
It preserves. It does not, however, turn the clock backwards to before they were expired. So take your chances.
That's a great point, Weber. If they go in spoiled, they're going to still be spoiled when they thaw out.
Probably so.
Yeah, that's right. All right, Mac Morey, what have we got in the world of sports?
Well, we just had an NFL combine last week, the NFL draft over a month away. So I thought, I needed to get down to the bottom of what everyone's talking about with these prospects. I mean, this could be a historic offensive tackle class. This could be a historic wide receiver class, both in talent and in amount of players picked in the first round. Both of those records could be broken. So I had Rhett Bryan of Titans Radio on my podcast today, Behind the Box Score. You can find it wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, 1045thezone.com. And I was talking to him not only about what the Titans should do, just about the whole landscape of this draft, of the NFL, because there's so many moving pieces. I mean, you start right off the top. Pick number 1 is the Chicago Bears. Are they going to trade that pick? Are they going to trade their quarterback? I mean, it fully depends. Who goes number 1 fully depends on what the Chicago Bears try to do with their quarterback right now, Justin Fields. Do they keep him? Do they trade him? And that changes everything. The whole rest of the draft depends on what the Chicago Bears do at number 1. So first off, I'm really excited to see in these next few weeks what happens there.
Predictions,
I think... Okay, here's what I would do. What I would do is if I'm the Patriots, I'm going to trade for Justin Fields, do what I can to go get him. The Patriots have the 3rd overall pick. I think Justin Fields has a lot of good football left to be played. I think we haven't seen him hit his peak, hit his stride. I think they've got a whole new regime over there in New England. They could bring on Fields. And then with that number 3 pick, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be sitting there. So all of a sudden, you can put up your new quarterback, get your top wide receiver.
Oh, wow.
You've ramped up your rebuild in a matter of a week.
And they know one another. I mean,
yep, they know
played
one.
together.
They played together.
Wouldn't you have to give up a little bit more than just the number 3 for Justin Fields? I mean, maybe you wouldn't.
No, I don't think you'd have to give up a first-round pick. I think you'd probably give up a second-round pick and maybe a late-round pick, maybe a player. But yeah, it's going to be a second-round pick. It's probably not going to be a first-round pick for Fields. So you can keep that 3rd overall pick if you're New England and kind of double dip here. Get your quarterback and go get Marvin Harrison. That's what I would do. What I think will happen is I think the Atlanta Falcons are going to scoop him up.
Justin Fields.
Yes, Justin Fields.
They want him. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, and the Bears organization is just so terrible. I used to call myself a Bears fan. I'm not anymore. I just gave up on them.
Too much heartbreak. I used to call myself a Falcons fan, and for the same reason, as soon as I moved to Nashville, I'm like, I'm a Titan, yay! And then look what has happened.
They want Caleb Williams. They want to draft. They think he's going to fix things, and it's like, okay, it's not going to make you all of a sudden a contending team. I mean, you've got a talent right there now at quarterback. But I think they want him to draft him. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do trade Fields to someone.
I saw a statistic, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, or someone was making a joke, but I think it's fairly close, that in the time that the Green Bay Packers in the NFC North have had Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, and now Justin Love, that the Chicago Bears have had almost 70 quarterbacks.
Yeah, no, that's like very accurate.
I think that's if that's not a real number, it's close.
It's extremely close. Yeah, no, their quarterback history is god awful. It's really sad. And Caleb Williams is
Trubinsky. No, not him.
Oh, okay. Trashbinsky? No, dang it. Yeah, I mean, when the best quarterback of the Bears in my lifetime is Jay Cutler, that's really
exactly.
bad.
Easy now.
No offense to the Vandy folks.
Yes, sorry guys. But Chicago, I mean, they're finally hit it right. You know, the number one pick with a generational talent in Caleb Williams. That's what I believe him to be. I think Caleb Williams has the ceiling of elite level play, Patrick Mahomes type talent. And they have the number 9 pick as well, because that number 1 pick, overall pick, comes from Carolina. So they've got 2 top 10 picks. They can get that wide receiver with Caleb Williams.
So do you feel like it's accurate? I heard it described as there's almost 2 drafts now. There's the quarterback draft, and then there's everybody else.
Yes.
That anybody that needs a quarterback has to get up in the top 10 or has to get up at least in the top 15 to find that QB that they feel like can repair. And it's still a crapshoot as to which quarterbacks are going to succeed versus which will flame out.
And it feels like it's the odds have gone down, right, to hit. I mean, even just last year, it's just one season, but the number 1 overall pick from last season, Bryce Young, didn't look too hot with the Carolina Panthers. Now, it's an abysmal team. They fired their head coach. There's a slew of issues over there, and maybe things will work out. He showed a couple of flashes, but it didn't necessarily work out. And we can go year in, year out in top 5 picks, look at the quarterbacks. Oh, that guy didn't hit. Oh, that guy didn't work out. I mean, Justin Fields being one of them. We'll see if he works out. He's shown those flashes. He'll be traded. He's still got some value. But the Titans are sitting there at number 7. And you mentioned that quarterback draft, Murphy. Depending on what happens, they can have a bunch of value here because there are going to be guys sitting there. Let's say New England does what I say, and they go get Marvin Harrison. And Arizona, they don't need a quarterback. The Chargers, they don't need a quarterback. The Giants, they're paying Daniel Jones. All of a sudden, you're at pick number 7 where the Titans are, and there's still, 2, maybe 3 quarterbacks that teams value. And you've got the Falcons. Maybe they didn't go get Fields. You've got, Minnesota, who needs a quarterback. The Denver Broncos sitting there right there at 12. Las Vegas Raiders at 13. There's so many people.
What can you get from a number 7 pick? You can get a first round, and then what? A second round, a third. I mean, what? I mean, you talk about value. If someone really wanted that number 7 pick, if there was a quarterback still on the board and they needed that quarterback, what could you, as a Tennessee Titans organization, get?
A first this year, a third this year, and possibly even a first next year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they don't have a third round pick. So you'd get there first, you'd get the first next year. And I mean, there's still going to be the guys that you want. Let's say you move down to 11, you move down 4 picks. There's still going to be those wide receivers. There's still going to be that offensive tackle that you really, really want. And that's what I was talking to Rhett Bryan about. Rhett's at the combine. He's talking to these players. He's scouting. He's watching the L22 film more than I can. And I asked Rhett, who do you want for the Tennessee Titans? And here's really what he said.
What is available at 7? Because if you're the Titans, offensive line is where I would start. They need a playmaking wide receiver, and they need an offensive lineman, in particular a left tackle. If Joe Alt from Notre Dame is at number 7, take him.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, Joe Alt. And he kind of went into depth here about what he thinks about Joe Alt. Here, real quick, here's what Rhett said.
Joe Alt is the head of the class, in my opinion, from Notre Dame. And what's more important is I don't care about the 40. What's the first 10 yards? The first 10 split in both of his attempts, 1.73 seconds, 1.74 seconds, and almost 6'9", 322 pounds.
Good gracious.
So he is the more polished and ready prospect.
Bigger than Wilson. Bigger than Wilson.
I didn't realize he was that big.
Yeah, he's almost 6'9", 320 pounds. And that first 10-yard stint that you heard, 1.7 seconds, he's got the athleticism. And Rhett talked about it. He's going to come in day one and be able to start.
Here's the thing. I mean, the wide receiver, and you're the expert, Maury, but the wide receiver depth benefits the Titans in as much as you pick the line. You can't just go pick a left tackle off a tree somewhere.
No.
You can't get them from free agency. The best ones, they stick, and the teams pay them, so you have to draft those players. And without that left tackle, I mean, we won't be able to see what Will Levis can bring to the team this year, right?
That's exactly right. Murphy, you sound like the expert right now. Here's what Rhett said today.
All I know is this. The free agent class every year of offensive tackles is slim and none, or they're old. And the reason is because the really good ones are under contract, Mac. They're there for a reason. They're not on the streets available.
That's it.
Were you in the room when they were having this conversation?
I was not in the room. I was not in the room.
Look at that. That's excellent analysis. That's exactly right.
But all the fans want the sexy picks. We want the skill position players. But if you don't have those grunts up front, then the skill position players can't show off. That's the bottom line.
If you get Joe Alt and he comes in and he's a top 10 left tackle, you've got Peter Skoronski as your left guard who showed that he was average to above average. You go and get a center maybe in later rounds. There's a bunch of interior offensive linemen that you can get on day 2 and day 3 of this draft. And all of a sudden, your offensive line's looking solid, and you've got a bunch of wide receivers that you can go get that you kind of talked about in the second and third rounds. I mean, there's guys like Ladd McConkey, who I know you guys both like out of Georgia.
Yeah.
I'm selfish. I want him as a Chiefs fan.
That boy was. I mean, that's incredible.
He's
I know
amazing.
that I'm giving. I mean, this is almost reverse racism, but I'm being a little racist that I'd say that white boy could be that fast, but he's running a 4.39.
Yes.
That's pretty good. Sub 4.4, right?
Mm-hmm. And he's a fantastic route runner, and he's going to come in and be polished. He can play on the outside. He can play on the slot. Brian Thomas Jr., 17 touchdowns last year with LSU. He may be a little too highly mocked. The Titans may not get him in the second round. But what about Xavier Worthy? He broke the 40-yard record, 4.21. I think he'll be available in the second round unless that 40-yard dash time really vaults his stock up that much. But there's just so many options here for the Tennessee Titans. I like what Rhett said. Get that left tackle and wait and get your skill guys. I know, as you said, Murphy, fans are going to go, oh, really? A big guy, first overall pick? Because then the next pick you're going to watch, Rome Odunze go. You're going to watch Malik Neighbors out of LSU, and they're going to be great. They are. But Joe Alt is going to protect your future of your franchise, or at least what you hope to be, Will Levis, and that's what matters.
What an incredible 12 minutes we just spent delving into the wide world of sports. Trevor has spoken for all of us, I think, on the Members Nutrition Super Text line when he says sports sucks.
Lovely.
Trevor.
That's why this is an award-winning segment.
That's what I'm told. There he is. He's Mac Maury in the wide world of sports. 5:52 on Super Talk.
6:01, I'm Mac Maury with your top story. 62 degrees in Nashville. Traffic, complete weather forecast coming up 5 minutes. Right now in Tennessee, the FBI and attorney Henry Levantis announced an indictment to Army Sergeant Corbin Schultz for sharing classified information with China. Channel 4 Sharon Dankwa brings us more information.
Schultz is being accused of getting and sharing national defense information, bribing a public official, and more. They say Schultz has shared documents, maps, plans, notes, and photographs with a Chinese conspirator. Now, Schultz is being paid $42,000 in 14 installments for sharing this information.
Some of the information he shared included documents related to advanced fighter aircraft, advanced military helicopters, intercontinental ballistic missiles, defensive missile systems, and Chinese military tactics. Schultz will appear in court tomorrow morning. A plane crash update. The 3 children and 2 adults who died in that single-engine plane crash on Monday night on I-40 West have now been identified. NTSB confirmed all 5 individuals were Canadian citizens. They were identified as pilot Victor Donsenko, 43 years old, his wife, 39 years old, Rima Donsenko, and their 3 children, David, aged 12, Adam, aged 10, and Emma, who was 7 years old. The flight had most recently left from Mount Sterling, Kentucky. NTSB now examining that plane to figure out what caused the engine failure, as well as why they didn't land at John Tune Airport when they chose to pass over it at 2,500 feet. And right now, staying in the volunteer state, it's now the 11th day of the search for the autistic 15-year-old Sebastian Rogers out of Sumner County. There are new developments. Kentucky State Police searching a landfill in Hopkins County where trash went from Rogers' neighborhood. Channel 4's Marissa Sulik.
About a dozen investigators are combing through the dirt and debris here. They are mainly looking in the front portion of this landfill. You can also see they're using an excavator to dig up that same area. Again, there's no evidence or information that indicates Sebastian could be here. Sumner County Sheriff's Office says this is a precautionary measure to eliminate any possible questions and options. Now, I did reach out to the Sumner County Sheriff's Office to see if they will have a press conference to give us any more information. They said they will not have one today as their main focus is looking for Sebastian.
The landfill is about an hour and a half north of Nashville. And we're hearing from a juror who took part in the trial of Hannah Gutierrez, the armorer on the set of the movie Rust, where a cinematographer was killed back in 2021. Mark Remillard.
Gutierrez was convicted of involuntary manslaughter Wednesday after jurors deliberated for less than 3 hours. Juror Alberto Sanchez tells ABC News that Gutierrez was in charge of the weapons on set and should have made sure they were safe.
Never did the safety checks. Never checked the rounds to pull them out, to look at them, shake them. I mean, if you'd have done that, this wouldn't have happened.
Cinematographer Helena Hutchins was killed and director Joel Souza was wounded when the gun held by actor Alec Baldwin went off. He faces trial in July.
And that is the latest news, traffic, and weather on the way. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
All right, here we are. Here we go. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. Brian out today, back tomorrow. I'll be back in my normal spot between noon and 3, much to the delight of many of you Drive listeners. I kid, because I love. We're here till 7 o'clock. We'll hand off to the great one, Mark Levin, at that time on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Pleased you've decided to join us. Big day in political news, as obviously it is a big night tonight in Washington, D.C. The State of the Union address set to begin in less than 2 hours, I guess. Long past Joe Biden's bedtime, but I'm certain that he's had a nap or two in preparation for the event this evening as he will deliver a State of the Union address. Already we're getting drips and drabs of what he's expected to say. That's what happens, right? They release excerpts because they want the ABC, CBS, NBCs of the world to catalog and categorize and tell you what you can anticipate and expect, and maybe get your get you all revved up and ready to go for the event tonight. But we'll be covering that all evening long, obviously, and all day long tomorrow, and anticipating the events tonight. Much more going on in the news as well, and we'll try to get to as many stories as humanly possible in the final hour of the drive, to include this deal going on in New York City. New York City. So I'm trying to get an understanding of what exactly the governor of New York has done to call out the New York National Guard, deploying them to subway stations in an effort to get some of the crime that's going on in those subways under control. And I think you have to take a few steps back to fully understand what the political left did to create the problem that they're now claiming that they're trying to solve. Because understanding these same liberals not 5 years ago were demanding that we abolish the police. Do you guys remember that? They wanted to abolish the police because defund the police / abolish the police. Redirect that money to other organizations. Was that not the message that Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and other organized protesters around the United States of America sent clearly to elected officials in major metropolitan areas like New York City in the aftermath of the George Floyd death? That because of the actions of one, we're going to blame the many, and we need to dismantle and rebuild police departments in an image more consistent with what these organizations would want to see. This is not a new pattern, that you create dynamics that unleash anarchy in metropolitan areas. You prevent the disruption of the anarchy by claiming that those that are empowered to stop it are somehow tyrannical in their approach. You deny that crime goes up as a result. So in New York, for example, there were marches in the streets, Black Lives Matter and other organizations, demanding that the city of New York defund the police because the New York City Police Department was racist or some sort of ist, that they had militarized themselves to the point that they did not resemble a civilian police force, and they need to be dismantled. As a result of the police departments feeling that pinch, whether it's through budget crunch or personnel leaving the department and going elsewhere, you see an uptick in crime, or just general attitude, right? A police department is much like a team, like a sports team. And if you don't feel the love of management, if you don't feel the love of the support base around you in the form of quote-unquote fans, then sometimes it can be difficult to motivate that team to go the extra mile, to do the extra things necessary to make sure that you're accomplishing the goals on the field that you're looking to accomplish. Similarly, in a police force, you can either do the basics, you can do what is expected of you and no more, or you can go the extra mile on patrol. Go the extra mile as a supervisor to make sure that your people are doing the things that they need to do. And trust me, I've talked to enough police officers around the country that if they're not feeling the love from their superiors, if they're not feeling the love from the elected officials that ultimately make certain decisions that dramatically impact their budgets and their departments generally, they pull back. And it's human nature that they would do that. So in New York City, we have gone in less than 5 years from a spirit of we need to abolish or defund the police because the police is way too militarized and they're way too draconian in their efforts to eradicate crime. Then when crime goes up as a result, now also in the midst of that happening, the state of New York went to a no bail system of justice. And I want to get to that in just a moment because there's another story involving New York that you will absolutely not believe. So this is kind of a crime and punishment segment. Crime goes up as a result because, believe it or not, as dumb as some criminals can be, they can read the headlines too. They walk the streets. They see when police are and are not patrolling, and when police aren't patrolling, they're going to do what criminals are going to do. So crime goes up, and those that initiated the policies that led to crime going up immediately denounce that crime is going up. You could overlay this story that I'm telling right now. It just occurred to me. You could lay this story about crime and punishment in New York City over the top of our immigration policy, and it's exactly the same story. Trump's wall is mean-spirited. Trump's wall is xenophobic. A crackdown on the southern border is anti-immigrant. It's anti-brown people. We're going to eliminate that. When they get the power, they start destructing the wall or deconstructing the wall. They sell off the wall parts. They essentially hang a sign on the southern border that says, come one, come all. One way or the other. One way or the... Instead of one way or the other, we're going to keep you out. It's one way or the other, you can get in. Either you just walk across the southern border anywhere you want to and get away that way, or come to a point of entry and get on in that way. No problem at all. And then when the surge of illegal immigration leads to the criminal activity that we know that it has led to, immediately those that created the surge deny that it's happening. And once it becomes undeniable, they blame the people that attempted to prevent it in the first place, which is what's going on in New York. So more on this. So they attempted to abolish the police departments. Crime goes up as a result. For the last several years, they've denied that crime is going up. Hey, guys, this is just the byproduct of living in a big city. Anybody that lives in New York City understands that. And crime has gotten so bad, especially underground, in the subways of New York City, that they have brought in the guys with the long guns and have unleashed what is essentially a military crackdown on the streets of New York. Now, all law-abiding citizens have to be subjected to bag searches and backpack searches and metal detectors. Now you have National Guardsmen deployed in the subway stations with, in some cases, AR-15s and other military gear. I don't know if they've got semi-autos down there, but, I mean, they've got a lot of firepower down there in the subways to try to get order from disorder. And everyone praises this action on the part of Governor Kathy Hochul, that she was willing to do this. Why did she need to do it to begin with? Because the liberal Democrats that run New York City would not do what is necessary to clap back on the leftist mantra that the defund the police movement was presenting 4 or 5 years ago, and they denied the rise in crime over the resulting 3 or 4 or 5 years, to the point that it's gotten so bad that you can't go into the subway system in New York City without expecting to get robbed or stabbed or worse. But that's not the half of it. In Suffolk County, New York, District Attorney Ray Tierney slammed New York Governor Kathy Hochul and her laughably inadequate crime platform after 4 suspects charged with dismembering 2 bodies. And I don't mean to laugh at this. It's so absurd that I'm saying it. It's almost laughable. It's absurd to the point that I can't believe it's true, but it's true. They let these people go. They had to. 4 suspects were charged with killing and dismembering 2 individuals and disposing of them in public. And they have been freed because of the state's bail laws. Under New York's bail reform law, passed in 2019 while Hochul was lieutenant governor, charges of merely chopping up and disposing of dead bodies are not eligible for bail. I'm not making this up. According to District Attorney Ray Tierney, who is personally handling the prosecution of the suspected Gilco Beach serial killer, the 4 suspects, Alexis Nieves, Amanda Wallace, Jeffrey Mackey, and Stephen Brown, are set to be freed on supervised release this week. The Suffolk County Police homicide detectives are the best in the country, he was quoted as saying, and they are working 24/7 on the case. For the governor to criticize the efforts of these detectives without knowing any of the facts in defense of a broken bail system is both baffling and indefensible. Hochul sat down with Good Day New York earlier in the week and discussed her new anti-crime initiatives, which involves sending state troopers and the National Guard, as I just mentioned, to the New York City subway system. She took a swipe at Tierney, saying maybe the DA should have done more of a thorough investigation and brought murder charges or conspiracy to commit murder or even assault, because all of them are bail eligible. In other words, because he could not bring those charges, he has no ability to hold these people for dismembering bodies. He does not have murder charges on them as of yet. Had he murder charges, he could have held them. But because he doesn't, he can't. And those are rules that Kathy Hochul supports. This is Democrat politics at play in America, folks. And it's scary. Because the Biden administration supports it fully. And Democrats right here in the state of Tennessee support it fully as well. Now, for a moment, I want to speculate. I wonder what would happen. What would liberals say if Governor Bill Lee decided to bring in the Tennessee National Guard to get control of Memphis? I wonder what the political left would suggest is going on there. Would they applaud Governor Bill Lee for his efforts in cracking down on the rampant crime that goes on in Memphis, Tennessee? Or would they accuse him of overreach and acting like some sort of tyrannical dictator as governor? Would they suggest that that's a local issue to be handled locally, or would they applaud him for his crackdown on crime? Just a thought exercise for you at 6:22 on The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thank you much, McMorey. 26 minutes after the hour, almost 27 past 6 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Matt Murphy, and for Brian Wilson. Brian back tomorrow. I'm back in my normal position between noon and 3. I want to, I understand that's a lot of heavy news late in the day regarding New York City and the reaction by the military and their dissension upon the New York City subway system. Several of you wanting to comment on it, and we'll get to you in a moment. But I think I need to lighten the load for just a minute. And I think I want to do so in the form of our good buddy over at MSNBC, Joe Scarborough. I'm late to this clip, and I would be surprised, Chris Webber, if Brian Wilson did not play this for you already. Has he played the Joe Biden cogent clip?
Possibly.
Well, even if he has, it's worth a repeat. It's 1 minute of your time, and it's the most hilarious thing you're going to hear, potentially ever. He's telling us how smart and with it Joe Biden really is. Here is Joe Scarborough, moron, on MSNBC.
But comparing that guy's mental state, I've said it for years now. He's cogent.
Talking about Joe Biden.
But I undersold him when I said he was cogent. He's far beyond cogent. In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been. Intellectually, analytically, because he's been around for 50 years. And, you know, I don't know if people knew this or not. Biden used to be a hothead. Sometimes that Irishman would get in front of the reasoning. Sometimes he would say things he didn't want to say. This is, and I don't really, you know what, I don't really care. Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth.
Oh.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not
oh, wait,
a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years.
The best Biden ever is this Biden. He's cogent.
This is the best Biden. I couldn't imagine what he was like in the 70s. Good grief.
He says he's the best Biden. I mean, even liberals are laughing at this nonsense. This is nonsense. Can you imagine having to shower off after that if you're Joe Scarborough? What levels has he sunk to? I want to be careful here because I don't want to degrade the drive with Brian Wilson. But you know, Joe Scarborough used to claim to be a Republican, and then he met Mika. And I'm just telling you, when they say that's undefeated, they mean it.
Say no more.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Hey everybody, Dan Mandis here. Got my first shipment of emergency food from My Patriot Supply. Gonna make these pancakes. Now you prepare and cook them just like regular pancakes. But thanks to the special packaging, they last for 25 years. So when things go wrong, you are eating right with My Patriot Supply. And yes, they taste great. Now every week, I'm going to introduce you to different food. My Patriot Supply is America's most trusted supplier of emergency food. Head on over to my website, preparewithmandis.com, right now and see all the different foods that they have and all the great specials as well. That's preparewithmandis.com. Be prepared for anything with My Patriot Supply and preparewithmandis.com.
It is The Drive, Super Talk 99.7, WTN, Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. All political eyeballs on Washington, D.C. and the U.S. Capitol as so many assembled there are anticipating an address by the President of the United States of America, Joe Biden, tonight. Biden will address the nation in a little less than 1.5 hours. And who knows how long the speech will be. I imagine there are advanced copies running around Washington, D.C. now, embargoed certainly until 8 p.m. Central Time. We can, I would anticipate, I don't know, but I would anticipate that he'll try to get above the 30-minute mark, certainly. He'll keep it beneath an hour because he didn't have the stamina. What is your best guess, Chris? We should do over-unders.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think it's going to be over 30. It depends on how much he stumbles and bumbles, though. I mean, it could go 50, 45 to 50 minutes.
I'm going 45 to 50. You know what? I think it's a good guess because it'll take him a while. He'll have, at least 3 or 4 people in the audience. They all do that now, where look who's here tonight. This is a person from Ukraine. This is why we are sending money to Ukraine. Here's a person who benefited from some program that I supported. Here's another person that suffered at the hands of Donald Trump or whatever it is. They'll introduce those people in the gallery. That takes a while because there's applause and whatever.
And then when he says all these fantastic things that he's done, he'll get these big, long, extended applauses as well.
If I were king for a day or king of the world for whatever, I would eliminate all of the applause just because it's a waste of our time. And it has become, maybe not just become, but it's become ridiculous. Let's get to Lee in Bowling Green. Lee, thank you for your call. Thank you for your patience. How are you?
Hey, fine.
You're on The Drive, Lee. What's on your mind?
Hey, can you hear me?
I cannot. Hello? I can't hear you.
Hang on.
I can't.
Can you hear me now?
I can't.
You cannot?
I'm just kidding. Get it? Because if I couldn't hear you, then I couldn't respond to you.
Sorry.
I was just joking around. I got you, Lee. What's on your mind?
Well, hey, that's what I thought, because I'm a long-time listener. First time getting through her, I thought, well, here we go. I done called him, and he didn't go get through.
You're here, man. You've got it.
I think we get along. I'm a Georgia fan, Chase fan, Braves fan, trying to make up for lost time. Tell Joe I did record it. But the thing I was thinking about, what happens when one of those National Guard people actually shoot and hit the wrong person, or what happens if they hit anybody? What would they do about that?
I would imagine that those National Guard people in the subway system are under strict orders not to shoot under virtually any circumstances.
Right.
It would not surprise me to find out that they have unloaded weapons, as a matter of fact.
True. Right. When you said that, I just thought rubber bullets. Like rubber bullets.
I would be willing to bet that it's all decorative and performative on the part of the city of New York and the state of New York. This is not a reflection on the National Guard, by the way, but it's a reflection on the politicians that exist there, that they're trying to prevent crime, presenting those individuals as a quote-unquote deterrent.
Got you.
That'd be my guess, Lee.
Yeah, I got you. All right, man, I appreciate it.
Well, Lee, thank you. What do you think about our season this year? No divisions, hard schedule. What do you got?
Waiting for the road courses to come up. Used to not like road courses, but I really do like them now. I like the stage system.
I do too. I do too. Thank you, Lee, for the call. I was going more for the bulldog angle. I didn't know we were going NASCAR, but that's okay too. I mean, I like the road courses.
Were there divisions in NASCAR?
I don't recall there being divisions in NASCAR. I'm
just asking.
He did say he was a Dogs fan, right?
Yes, I think he covered a lot of territory that you guys have in common. So I guess racing was one of them.
We guys have it in common.
Well, I mean, he mentioned a lot more.
You're not a Braves
fan or a NASCAR fan, but anyway.
How'd we lose you with the Atlanta Braves?
Well, my dad's from Chicago, so I grew up a Cubs fan.
Yeah, there you go. That makes sense. Kevin's in Bellevue. Kevin, what's on your mind? Biden's State of the Union, I believe?
Yeah, Biden's State of the Union. I think he'll last about maybe 30, 35 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll hang in there. The applause itself, the recognition of assembled people in the gallery, the perfunctory crap that goes on nowadays, Mr. Speaker, Ms. Speaker, whatever. I mean, all of that will account for 15 or so minutes of the thing to begin with. And I think if I had to put a time on it, I'm going to go right there in Chris Webber's zone. I'm going to say 47 minutes and 30 seconds. Let's see how close I get tomorrow.
That's great. Also, I sent you the text message of 3 Red Bulls and a Snickers.
Well, he's going to have something. There's no question about that, Kevin. Thank you for the call. Joe Biden must have some sort of energy beverage or infusion. I don't know what it is. We were discussing that in the 3 o'clock hour, what exactly it would be. What sort of cocktail you would prescribe if you were a doctor to keep the guy up. And Kevin offered 3 Red Bulls, maybe a 5-hour energy as well. All right, some other news that I want to cover before we get out of here. Fani Willis, when she ran against her former boss, I did not know this until today. Fani Willis, of course, the accused district attorney in Fulton County, when she ran against her former boss, Paul Howard, in 2020, she highlighted not only the experience that she would bring to her position and her job, but also her unblemished past and unblemished record. Now, understand, now we believe that Fani Willis was having a clandestine affair with Nathan Wade even then. But at the time that she ran against Paul Howard, apparently Paul Howard was embroiled in a sexual harassment scandal involving a relationship with a woman in his office. Willis offered both experience and ethical leadership, including pledging repeatedly, quote, "I will certainly not be choosing to date people that work under me." Well, Willis is now obviously accused of this very type of wrongdoing. As Jonathan Turley writes, and I believe the New York Post repeated it or printed it, she and her lead prosecutor are not just accused of having an intimate relationship, but they're accused of the same type of underlying conduct that they are actually prosecuting in Donald Trump's election interference case against the former president and other defendants. And it now includes allegations of filing false statements with the court and influence witnesses. Allegations that Trump and his co-defendants are specifically charged with. This week, another witness came forward with a new allegation against Willis. In prior hearings in Atlanta, Nathan Wade was confronted with what appeared to be a false statement made to the court in his divorce case, false statements that he repeated under oath in disqualification testimony, which, I don't know if you know this or not, that's illegal. For example, Wade was asked about his denial of a sexual relationship during the time of his marriage and separation up until May 30th of 2023. It would obviously include the sexual relationship with Willis in 2022 and possibly earlier. Wade, however, denied any sexual relationship, said he confined the question to sexual relations, meaning an affair in the course of my marriage. Wade and Willis have also been contradicted in their testimony by various witnesses who said they lied about their initial relationship starting after he was hired in 2022. It is a dirty, sordid, nasty affair, and I believe if the judge were going to allow Fani Willis to continue as the prosecutor in this case, he would have announced that last week. if I were a betting man, and I am, and I had to put money on this, which I won't, I would suggest that the judge is going to politely decline to allow Fani Willis to continue as lead prosecutor in this case, which will completely reset the case in Georgia. Jack Smith has already been stymied by the United States Supreme Court, while the United States Supreme Court hears arguments next month regarding whether or not Donald Trump enjoys total immunity as president of the United States. It is a case that I don't know that Donald Trump will win. He might win a piece of it. I don't think he'll get the whole enchilada, but he might win a piece of this. And it involves both the D.C. case, the Jan 6th case, and the documents case down in Florida. That's the Jack Smith side of things. Obviously, the Colorado deal with him being removed from the ballot has already been dispatched with. So Donald Trump is enjoying a few major victories in advance of being officially nominated to be the next candidate for the Republican Party for president of the United States of America. And then there's this. Now, we're enjoying something of a warming spell. We've had some rain over the last week or so, we don't have to worry about the heat being on that much, but it is still wintertime in many parts of the country. And according to newhomesmate.com, which is a marketplace for new construction homes, facing soaring utility costs across the United States of America over the past several months, some people are choosing interesting and maybe not so new ways to stay warm. In a survey of over 1,000 Americans, 46% said that they're struggling to afford their bills, while 25% said they pile on extra clothing, and 35% say that they have to choose between heat and groceries. A smaller percentage, I should say, they've decided to go an alternate route in order to stay warm. 2% answering the survey of 1,000 Americans say that they get drunk in order to stay warm. I suppose that's as good a method as any. 5% say that they have relations with their significant other.
Ayo.
Hello. Honey, we got to worry about that heat bill. Might want to get between the sheets. Just a thought, guys, if you're worried about the bills tonight, or other things, maybe a suggestion to bring up to the significant other. It's 6:49 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Hey everybody, Dan Mandis here. Got my first shipment of emergency food from My Patriot Supply. Gonna make these pancakes. Now you prepare and cook them just like regular pancakes. But thanks to the special packaging, they last for 25 years. So when things go wrong, you are eating right with My Patriot Supply. And yes, they taste great. Now every week, I'm going to introduce you to different food. My Patriot Supply is America's most trusted supplier of emergency food. Head on over to my website, preparewithmandis.com, right now and see all the different foods that they have and all the great specials as well. That's preparewithmandis.com. Be prepared for anything with My Patriot Supply and preparewithmandis.com.
I absolutely adore the fact that Brian Wilson gives me the opportunity to spend some time with you in the afternoons, for those of you unable to hear me, in the midday from noon until 3. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll watch tonight so you don't have to. If you want to get a restful night's sleep or don't want to enjoy a little heartburn watching Joe Biden, let us handle that, and we'll report back with you tomorrow on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Have a wonderful evening, folks. Brian Wilson back tomorrow. I'm back from noon until 3 tomorrow on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So long.